And we are live, are we? Yes, Mattie Harte, how are you?
Doing good, Matt, and yourself?
Yeah, awesome, man. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much.
All right, now I'm so excited about this. I've gotten to know you these last few weeks. We introduced you to sushi in my house. You'd never had sushi before.
No, and I will not have it again.
We introduced you to kombucha.
I probably won't have that again either.
And now, for the first time on live YouTube, you're going to drink your first espresso. So let me know what you reckon.
Yeah.
You're probably going to... What do you reckon, Matt? What do you reckon? Awful?
It's like tar.
Yeah. That's why I like it, man.
No, it's good. I don't mind coffee. I didn't drink coffee till I came to America.
Yeah.
My first set of midterms for the Masters here. Coffee creamer. We don't have coffee creamer in Ireland.
Yeah.
And it's a joy. It's an absolute treat.
It is.
You know?
Yeah, now, growing up in Australia... At least in my day and age, like coffee's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Probably in the cities of Ireland and also in Australia. But growing up, we drank tea and then instant coffee.
Yeah. That's,
you too?
Yeah. Tea and instant coffee. But even then, I was more of a hot chocolate drinker.
Yeah.
If anybody's never had white hot chocolate, it's
to die for.
Yeah. It's pretty beautiful. Yeah.
And then I remember I think I did. World Youth Day in Canada, and I tried North American coffee, just like you're saying, and people would have these creamers in the fridge, like pumpkin and peppermint, and it was amazing.
Yeah,
but they didn't have that.
It's a science. Like, people take it super seriously over here, and it's way better. I mean, it is. There's no point saying otherwise,
Yeah.
So I'm impressed by America in many ways, but their coffee is really good.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show today. We want to talk about the state of the Catholic Church in Ireland. Obviously, I'm looking forward to hearing a bit of your story as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just begin there. You're a faithful Catholic.
I try to be, yeah.
Maybe tell us, just for those watching, who are you, and how, to tell us a bit about your story.
Yeah, so I'm Mattie Harte. I'm married with 3 children. Mary is 4.5. Pio just turned 3 on the 20th of March. John Gabriel is almost 9 months, and then we have number 4 on the way in August. And my wife Katherine is just the most superb person I've ever met, and she's beautiful and amazing. And
I concur. She's great. Not the most amazing person. I shouldn't say that. She's one of the most amazing people.
Cameron somewhere crying. We moved to America 3 years ago to do the Masters in Theology. Now, you've been to Ireland. You know that's not a typical journey for a young Irish person to come and want to study theology. I probably got a typical Irish upbringing in many senses from my generation. Like, most of my kids and friends in elementary school, everybody went to mass. People would have said their prayers morning and night, and I was the same. And I kind of got the faith of my parents, which was caught rather than taught. They weren't able to maybe defend or catechize as much. It was just, this is what we lived, this is what we did, this is what everybody did. It was essentially a Christendom of sorts. It was like the same routines and mores and traditions and ways of living. It was Catholic Ireland. And that's what we were brought up with.
And where did you grow up in Ireland?
Oh, yeah. So I'm from the north, which I suppose for many American viewers, they won't understand the difference between north and south of Ireland. 100 years ago, actually, in May, Ireland became partitioned into effectively two jurisdictions. There was a war of independence against the British from 1920 to 21, and after that there was a treaty by which the 26 counties of the south were given their own free state, whereas the 6 counties in the north remain under British jurisdiction. And we'll get to the history of the Troubles in a minute, but with an enshrined Protestant majority, deliberately so to protect them against their hostile Irish neighbours, and I'm from the middle of the north, so my Catholicism would very much have been associated with Irish nationalism, where it was we weren't too fond of the British, we weren't too fond of Protestants. I mean, there's no other way to say that. There was a civil war there called the Troubles from 1969 to about 2007, and you were fiercely proud to be Catholic because you weren't British and Protestant. And I couldn't have told you. It was nothing doctrinal. Like, I couldn't have told you what we believed, really. I couldn't have told you what Protestants believed. I just know that we were Catholic and they weren't, and we were Irish and they weren't. Now, my parents, thanks be to God, were able to protect us a lot from the worst of it. And we never hated anybody. but it was a definite thing you grew up with. That was what Irish Catholicism meant, and it was tainted that way. And that is the same in the South as well. In the previous generations, it was tainted with or associated with sort of an anti-Britishness and a we are other, and we are proudly Catholic and Irish, and that's our identity as opposed to being British.
So is it fair to say, people often hear about, Protestant versus Catholic in Ireland, are those basically synonymous for Irish and English then?
Yeah,
so the reason y'all are
it's-
hating each other has less to do with religion and more to do
absolutely. It's a nationalistic conflict that happened to be along religious lines. I mean, there's a comedian, Des Bishop. He's actually an Irish American. Yeah. He came over and he did like workshops in the north with Catholics and Protestants, trying to get a sense of the things. And there were these two young kids from like a Shankill area, a very, very staunch British Protestant area, and they knew he was from the south, so they were eyeing him with suspicion, but they could hear his American accent, and they couldn't pigeonhole him, and they're like, "Are you a Catholic or a Protestant?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not religious at all." And they looked at each other and like, "This has nothing to do with religion. Now, are you Catholic or a Protestant?"
Is that what they said?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's essentially what it was. Like, it wasn't about doctrine. It wasn't about beliefs or practices. It was a nationalistic conflict along religious lines. And that's what we grew up with. And because I believed in God and went to Mass, among my friend group, I would have been the one who was into the faith. I would have been the one who was the faith person. Particularly when you get to secondary school and into college, whenever you're like, I went to 14 years of Catholic education and didn't understand my faith whatsoever. I mean, that's we'll get onto that later on as well. Didn't really understand it, couldn't have defended it. And then when we get to college and my friends are, I don't drink either, but they're at 3 a.m. and a bit tipsy, and suddenly, as you say, everybody's a philosopher. Everybody, what is this about? What is this life about? And
why doesn't she talk to me?
And then they would push me because they knew I believed certain things. They'd ask me questions. Why are you doing this when nobody else is? Why are you not doing this when everybody else is? And I couldn't defend it.
It's so funny. It's like that people say everyone makes fun of the Catholics until there's a house that's possessed, and then no one's calling the First Baptist pastor. But there's something similar. I remember I became a Catholic when I was 17, and it was like that too. Everyone would shy away from talking about religion or even make fun of me for my faith until they were drunk. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it got really serious.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of our best cards to play, I think, as Catholics and as people of faith, is that deep desire for meaning and purpose and to know what life's about is in everybody. I've taught in secondary schools for 7 years, north and south back home. It's in everybody, and they're hungry for it, and they're being sold an awful version of what meaning and purpose is. And we have the answers to the questions. Like we have the meaning of life. We have the truth, the capital T, and we have to get better at telling them about it,
So for you growing up, the temptation wasn't, should I become Protestant, obviously, because Protestants were like, that's the last thing I'd become.
Yeah.
So for you, was it just, okay, live my Catholic faith or just kind of become agnostic, atheist?
Yeah. Like, a majority of my friends, even those who would say they believe in God, and maybe even they go to Mass on Sundays, would massively disagree with a lot of what the church teaches. They probably wouldn't affect their lives other than going to Mass on Sundays. And it got to the point where, because I didn't have the answers to the questions, I felt so battered down that I was like, jeepers, are we right? All these other religions and all these other faiths, like, how arrogant am I to say we have the right answer? How arrogant am I to say that the Catholic Church is the one true church and Jesus is the only God?
How old were you when you were?
Really 17, 18, 19,
I see. Yep.
And then get into college, and then people are moving lifestyles, because you're in a Catholic school, at least you're in the rigors and the movement of, you're going to religion class, you're going to Mass, with your school, and you're doing prayers for the dead in November, and you're doing Christmas, and different things are still there in the Catholic schools that anchor you to it. But whenever you get to college, it's a different story, and it made my faith seem like a fluffy cloud, you're just not smart enough yet to realize there's no God. You're just, you'll get there eventually, But I knew it was true in here, but I couldn't defend it. A number of things sort of happened to change that, Growing up, I'm the youngest of four. two older brothers and my sister, Michaela, Mark and Michael, my older brothers. They were older and they kind of left me to my sister. So I was like her guinea pig. Do you know what French tips are?
No.
Yeah.
Tell us.
And it's a good thing you don't know what French tips are. For any men out there, it's a good thing.
All right.
It's the white bits at the end
of
the nail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really glad I didn't know that. Yeah. Go me.
So like when this hand was wet, I had to paint the other hand. So I had to paint her nails. I had to straighten the back of her hair.
I see. So when you say you were left as a guinea pig,
it was like no, leave him alone. I had to apply fake tan to the parts that were hard to get.
Go Irish girls with the
absolutely,
fake tan.
Absolutely. But I will say this, for anybody who has an older sister, they are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the opposite sex.
Absolutely.
She would draft text messages for me and explain to me how I'm supposed to act and behave, and really give me her own sort of morality, which was, you respect yourself and you respect girls and you don't do this, and we had important conversations about sex before marriage and why it wasn't a thing, and it wasn't particularly theological. Like it wasn't even really a faith thing. It was like, this is the most intimate and important gift. We knew the church taught this, but didn't know why. I couldn't have told you anything about the theology of the body. And I am explaining about her, and I'll explain one other thing before I get to the point. At home, my father is, for want of a better term, a well-known sports coach. Our national sport is Gaelic football. It's the best sport in the world. That's how you know it. It's like, oh yeah, that's it. That's what it's.
Yeah.
It's like a cross between basketball, rugby, and soccer.
Yeah.
And it's like
Aussie rules football developed from it.
I'm
sure it became worse in your opinion, but yeah, that's a great. It's a great game.
Absolutely.
And it hasn't been kind of commercialized in the same way.
No, it's an amateur sport. Do you know what I mean? It's a voluntary organisation. Now, it has employees, like the central organisation is employed at different counties. Every county has their team. Every parish has their team. It's literally defined along parish lines.
Yeah.
That was what my father became known for, because we won our version of the Super Bowl 3 times in 2003, 2005, 2008. Made a bunch of semi-finals. Made another final. He was kind of well known. And because of that, my sister was kind of well known, because she was always with him and went to training and went to the matches and was always on the pitch afterwards with him and stuff. 10 years ago, she got married to a great guy, and they were on honeymoon on the island of Mauritius, which is an island off Africa. And she went back to her room to get a biscuit or a cookie with her cup of tea, and she walked in and 2 guys burgling or robbing the room. And they murdered her, and they strangled her and put her in the bath and filled the bath to make it seem as if she had drowned. And I mean, to put it in context, her wedding was front page news in Ireland. So then 10, 11 days later, this happened, and it just became a media frenzy like we had never ever experienced or seen before. And everybody has their crosses, everybody has their stuff going on, that's just part of life. Ours just happened to be in the public eye, but again, anybody who's experienced that type of loss, you're just talking deep mourning, serious grief.
Where were you when you found out?
I was actually teaching in a secondary school, at Catholic school, and my father got the call from her widow, and he could hardly talk, and he had to pass the phone to the hotel owner, and he's just like, this man's wife is dead. He just didn't know what else to say. And my dad went and got my brother Mark, and then they came and got me. And my uncle Paddy, who was my godfather, was actually dying of cancer at the time. And I thought, oh no, something's happened to Paddy. But it turned out what happened to my sister, and then we went and got my brother and my mother. And it was such an awful experience in so many ways. I mean, anybody who's experienced grief and mourning and loss knows what I'm talking about. Just a cloud descends over you, and I was training to be a teacher at the time, and I didn't care. I couldn't look beyond the cloud of probably depression and just utter grief, Well,
I'm sure people have experienced loss. They've lost a loved one. Maybe they've even lost somebody who was young, but not a lot of people that I know have lost somebody to murder.
Yeah,
that must have been atrocious.
It was utterly tragic, and I can only speak for myself and my father, but we got a grace to not be angry. It was I again can't speak for the rest of my family,
Sure.
but for me and my father, I think it was down to my sister's faith, because her faith was so strong. Out of all of us, out of me and my siblings, she prayed the rosary every day, and she just had this unerring belief in God's plan. I don't know where it came from. We didn't have it. She just had this unerring belief in God's plan. If it was something as simple as my father's team getting beaten a game, her friend being kept back a year in school because of some administrative thing, if it was something more serious, don't worry, God will turn to the good. God will turn to the good. And I've seen how he's done that in my life already through that tragedy. I mean, because it was such a big deal, and RTE and BBC and all the initials landed into our parish, and they literally covered the whole thing at the wake. Do people know what wakes are in America?
They should, but unfortunately I think we just throw the deceased away as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't actually sit with it. But
a wake is honestly one of the most cathartic and phenomenal things I think we do in our Irish culture.
It's beautiful. I remember that. I lived there for 3 years, and I
Yeah.
experienced a wake at a few different times. Yeah.
You know,
So why was it cathartic?
Well, like the body's brought back of the deceased, and usually into their own room, it's cleared out, and people automatically spring into action. I mean, Ireland does community really well. Not Catholic community, but community really, really well. Where you'll have the local pub will bring in chairs, people to sit down on. Women will come in and clean the house. They'll make tea and sandwiches. Men will be out putting up lights and getting cars and doing ferries for people to park their car and come up to see to pay their respects. But it's a 2.5 to 3 day process where people stay awake through the night with the body. It's unbelievably cathartic because you get to spend time processing what's happening. You get to spend time, obviously it's with the deceased body, but you're spending time in that grief with them. And people come to share stories about how they impacted their life and to support you and to have fun and talk and just get you through it. And I can't imagine it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not doing death that way, But we had...
You got to face it. It's right there.
Yeah. But we had 20,000 people that came through our house.
Holy moly.
Because of that, from all
20,000.
Yeah, from all over the island. And in the north, obviously, you're split between Protestant and Catholic, but the Protestant politicians, so there's joint prime ministership type thing. Protestant politicians and the Protestant prime minister came into our house and they said a prayer in the room with us. And then the president of Ireland came as well, and it was bonkers, but it restored a lot of the faith and good of people in me. I saw the good in people come out more than anything. And again, my father and I had this grace just not to be angry because my sister's faith was so strong, and we saw that in her, and that gave us great consolation.
Yeah, I remember when we first met and this came up, I think one of the first things I said is, did they catch the bastards? I was so angry.
Yeah.
And I remember you said to me, I forget what you said regarding whether they caught them or not, but I remember you saying that you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet daily for those who murdered your sister.
Yeah.
Brother.
Yeah.
What a grace.
It's only by grace, Matt. It's only by grace because it's not easy. I mean, I'll come on to it later on, but Jesus asked us to pray for those who persecute us and love our enemies. And at the time when I read that, I was like, well, I don't really have many enemies. I was thinking about people who, the kid who bullied me at school and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, I need to pray for him then. Let that stuff go. But forgiveness is from the Lord. If he can look down from the cross and say to us, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Like, who am I to hold back the Lord's forgiveness from somebody else? And the Our Father, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So I had begun to take him seriously, and it's like, okay, if he said this, that means we have to do it, and he'll give us the grace to do it, and it's only by God's grace, and the principle over the emotion, and the principle is Jesus Christ died for us on the cross to save us and forgives us our sins. He calls us to do the same. That's a principle, and sometimes it feels like it and you feel okay, you can do it. Other times it doesn't, but it's like, I know you're going to give me the grace to do this day by day. And Sandeep and Avinash, they're the two men. I mean, there was a full murder trial.
Say that again.
Sandeep and Avinash, they're the two men.
Those are the men who killed you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There was a full murder trial. It was the biggest court case in the history of Mauritius country. Because all the Irish and sort of British press landed into Mauritius, and it ended up, it was supposed to be a 2-week trial. It became a 6 to 7 week trial. And it was a whitewash. It was just nonsense from start to finish,
Really?
There was no justice whatsoever. But again, that belongs to the Lord. And
Did they get off?
Yeah, they got off with a scot-free. Yeah.
Did they plead not guilty or?
So initially they pleaded guilty, and they had confessions from them. And then And then, I mean, there's actually a podcast. My sister's with it, a podcast, Murder in Mauritius. It's a 9-episode series, detailing the details of the case. I haven't been able to listen to it because I just know if I went back there, it'd be a very dark place. They played not guilty, they did guilty and had confessions. Then they played not guilty. Then tried to pin it on my sister's widow. Then they tried to, it was just all over the place. And it was sort of like, I mean, my sister was a teacher. Her husband was a trainee accountant. It was like rich white foreigners in a country, and it was just, it was a whitewash from start to finish. But
what was the incentive for the justice system to let them off?
There were Christians in a Muslim-dominated country. Was one thing. So it wasn't really a jury of their, that was going to be favourable to these rich white foreigners coming in to do this, and there it's a bit of a kangaroo court type thing. It's just corruption and like one of the lawyers actually changed sides in the middle of the trial and stuff. It was just nonsense, absolute nonsense. And I mean people deal with that in different ways. Again, you go back to home and different tragedies, things have happened, and it can consume you. It can get you really angry and bitter. And I've seen it happen to people. But that's not of God. I have to pray. Like I look at that, what Jesus said, I have to pray that someday those men will be sitting beside me in heaven, because what's the alternative? Like to wish hell for them? That's not of God. And justice belongs to Him. So we'll pray, like keep praying that happens. But that's what belonging to Jesus looks like. It's like, and the freedom that comes from giving that over to Him, and not let it consume me and fill you full of bitterness and hatred. It's like that's on you, Jesus. You said this. I'm gonna do it, and you're gonna give me the grace to do it.
A lot of people say that forgiveness is a decision. You can't wait for your emotions to catch up. Mm-hmm. For you, was that the case? Or did you somehow have peace close to the start of all this?
Well, like I said, my father and I got a grace not to be angry. Yeah. And I suppose out of sight, out of mind was partly true because it was a country thousands of miles away where that happened. So we were in deep mourning and grief. Mm. But you're dead right in that, like I've heard described as like, if our emotions are driving the train, right? Sometimes we'll feel, it comes to faith, it comes to forgiveness, it comes to whatever. Sometimes we'll feel really great and close to God and feel like, oh yeah, this is great. Other times, depending on how we wake up, we're feeling really down and really far away from God. That's not what we want. We want our will to be driving the train, and our emotions will follow afterwards. So the active principle and act of the will to say, I'm going to forgive these men, I'm going to pray for them every day, that gives me the strength and help to do it, but it also means it keeps my emotions in check. Because that act of will, that act of a decision of the heart, informed by Jesus, helps me do that, And again, it's only by the grace of God. If I chose to go there, if I chose to go into that room and think about it, I know, and even for the sake of my wife and kids, I don't do that because I know it would lead me to a dark place, And it's like I just have to pray and let God take it, Yeah.
All right, so it sounds like your sister, Michaela, was a strong influence in your life as far as the faith is concerned. Yeah. But when she... What's that?
No, I'm just thinking, because even at that stage, I was still an idiot. Okay. It wasn't like, that all happened, but it was the start of a process.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
So you weren't kind of bought into Catholicism necessarily at that point. It was still a very traditional, customary sort of thing.
It was very much... this is who we are. It's who I choose to be. I can't say Jesus is the one true God. I can't say Catholicism is always right. But this is who I am. I know God's real. Don't know what else that means.
It's sort of like I'm Irish, for good, for better or for worse. Yeah. So for whatever sins we may have committed, whatever things have been done to us, I'm Irish. I'm Catholic. That kind of thing.
That's absolutely it.
So how did that start to change?
So what happened was, like football was my God that stage, our sport, and I mean like gung-ho, 3 protein shakes a day, weighing out my food. Well, my mum was weighing out my food because I was living at home, and she was making my food, and doing 2-a-day sessions and just busting myself to be the best I could be at this sport, because that was what manhood was. It was, how good are you at sport, and that was what the parish was, because it's, your parish is your team. A number of things happened to change that. I got injured and couldn't play in our big championship that season, and I met a young Catholic priest. Whenever I was 26 years old, 25, 26 years old. He was the first person who could ever answer my questions.
So how did you meet him? And
Actually, through my sister.
Okay.
He asked my father, could he use my sister as a patron for his Catholic summer camp? And my dad said, yeah. And then he says, we've actually started this foundation. So when people heard about my sister, they kept sending letters and sending money and sending good wishes and stuff and do something to honor her. And one of the things we did was we set up summer camps in her honor, around elements of her life, which was her faith, her fashion, because she's a real girly girl, like healthy living, because she didn't drink and just exercised and looked after herself, fun, or crack as we call it. I'll have to explain that one later. It's not a drug, I promise. And the Irish language, because she taught the Irish language. But the very first camp was like the week after the first murder trial, and it was a beacon of hope and light for us. But one of the volunteers in the faith element of the camp was actually a girl called Katherine, who's now my wife. So that's how I met my wife.
So did you meet her before you started having these questions about the
no, I didn't meet her until after that, until after my sister had died the next year. At the summer camp was the first time I met her. So she was the faith one in her group as well. Yeah. So we both kind of started journeying together. My father met this priest, and he put us in touch with him through this foundation. He came to say mass for us and blew me away. Like, his reverence was unbelievable. And this was in a retreat hall. It wasn't like it was the most beautiful, incredible liturgy, but his reverence was unbelievable. And I was like, oh, this guy has something else. Then he came to my sister's.
What did you notice about it? When you say reverence, what is it that you saw that struck you?
For one, not to sound flippant, he said mass like he believed it. He said the words with purpose. He preached with passion and conviction and fervour. And the way he held our Lord with the utmost care and the duration of his consecration was essentially what it was. It was a long consecration. I was like, whoa, this is something incredible that's happening here, something very significant. That was a big part of my journey towards the realization of the real presence. He came to Catherine's house, and then we just started firing questions at him.
Who's we?
Myself, Katherine, Catherine's mum, her sisters, her brother, a couple of her aunties heard this priest was coming, so we all gathered together to really grill him.
About the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because y'all were going to Mass, your family are all Catholic.
Yeah.
And yet you were grilling him about the Catholic faith.
Yeah. I mean, as it was caught rather than taught, it was lived. But
Well, maybe it began with sort of issues you had with Catholicism. We get a lot of it. We believe a lot of it. But what about this?
Yes,
what were those kind of hot button topics that
one of
you began with?
One of them was for me, because I'd been really struggling with, if Jesus is really present in the Eucharist, how are we worthy to receive him? That makes no sense, And Father was just like, look, nobody's worthy to receive him. The Pope's not worthy to receive him. It's out of the goodness and grace of God that he wants us to receive him, his condescension to us. The realization, like, oh, okay, this guy can answer my questions. This guy can speak truth. This guy, and I remember in my heart, like, literally on fire listening to him on the road to Emmaus, and like, that's it. That's truth. That's why we're Catholic. That's it. And this is like the answer to my questions for years, through high school and through college, been like, that's it. And he invited us to go on a pilgrimage to Fatima.
Before we get to that, what other questions did you fire at him? Do you remember anything, like, was his answers just very convincing, or was that something of a blur, and it was more his example that convicted you?
It was both, and it was a convincing and articulate argument for the truth. Okay, it was that moment around the table, but then the week in Fatima, because I got to share a room with him, and I grilled him again. I was like, heaven, hell, purgatory, same-sex marriage, contraception, even things I agreed with. I was like, tell me why we believe this. Tell me why we do this. Why do I hold this? Demons, the angelology, the whole works, like literally Catechism 101 for me. I felt like I was catechized in like 9 days, because I had all these questions the whole time. And I would write them on my hand, write the answers in the back of my arm, and come down and be like, okay, why do we believe this? Why do we hold this?
So did he invite you to Fatima?
Yeah.
All right, tell us about that.
So he had a pilgrimage going with his parish. He invited myself and Katherine to go. I was still in throes of sport. I was like, I need to stay home, do my rehab, get back from my injury. But I just knew this guy has something, and I wanted. So I said to go to Fatima, and on the plane and then on the bus ride from Lisbon to Fatima, I remember thinking, like, what am I doing in rural Portugal? Like what am I doing here? I never heard of Fatima. Like, I literally didn't know anything about it. I was like, why am I in rural Portugal, Father? And he said a few things that just stay with me forever. He's like, Mattie, Our Lady appeared here. She knew millions of people were going to come here. She knew you were going to come here. She's left incredible graces behind. All you have to do is open your heart and truth and ask to receive them. And you'll get them, and she'll bless you. That was a challenge for me because, like, real prayer of the heart. Previously it's like, oh, me and you are close, come on, like, flicking a coin to a wishing well, like, sort me out, like a divine vending machine, And I remember my prayer from having met Katherine right up until going to Fatima was, help me be the best man I could be for you, God, and for her. Because I knew I needed to be a better man. She made me want to be a better man. And I knew I needed to be that. And God knew it better than I did. And I was like, I know you know this. I need you to help me do this. I think Fulton Sheen's phenomenal on that. And like, the history of the world can be written by its women, by how they hold themselves, their virtue, their morals, their standards. Men have to rise to be better, to be worthy of them. And that's the way I felt. I was like, okay, I want that. I want what he has, this priest, and I want him to be the best man I can be. So a number of experiences happened on that pilgrimage. The first one was we were praying in adoration before the Blessed Sacrament and praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet. And it hasn't happened to me since, but when we went in, there was something different in the room. There was like electricity in the air, and I was just hit by the full force of the of our Lord's presence. It was just revealed to me in that moment, wave after wave of power and love just emanating from the host. It took my breath away. I was just transfixed. I couldn't take my eyes off the monstrance. I couldn't take my eyes off him. And I was just like, this whole time, my whole life, you've been there. Every tabernacle, every time I went to adoration, every church I went into, you have been there, and I didn't know it. And I was utterly transfixed. And we left that adoration church, and it was Portugal in July. The sun was splitting the skies, and I was like, this world is dull. Like, that's a window into heaven. I was like, I want that. I want that. The next day, I'd been given the honour of carrying Our Lady in the procession around Fatima. And this was a big deal for me because the last woman I'd carried on my shoulder was my sister at her funeral. So that was an emotional thing for me. I knew Our Lady's gonna heal me here, but I also knew I needed to go to confessions. Now, confessions growing up in Ireland, if you went at all, it was just, it's good to see you. Young man in confessions, jeepers. Good man, you're doing great. Go on ahead. And like my prep, my prep would have been the same as it was as an 8 or 9 year old, maybe for a long time. Like fought and cursed and things like that. And it's like, if I want God to get real with me, I have to get real with God here. And I knew, and we all know deep down in our heart, the things that are holding us back from virtue, the things that are holding us back from being the best version of ourselves. And we know that right is right, even if nobody's doing it, and we know that wrong is wrong, even if everybody's doing it. In our heart of hearts, we know that. And I knew there were certain things holding me back. So I went and I spent 45 to an hour just writing out everything I knew I was sorry for. Like, everything over the years of my life. Because going to confessions previously, I would have alluded to things or hinted at things, or like, oh no, don't mention that. That never happened. Don't worry. People just want to hear that. So poured my heart out onto this page, went into the priest, the Dutch priest who spoke English. He must have knew I was ready for it. Because I can only describe it as an interview to get into heaven.
Really?
He grilled me. Like, he went for it. And he was like, I was, saying my confessions. He was like, well, I'll stop you there. What are you going to do to improve that part of your life? And I was like, you're not supposed to ask questions. Why are you... Why?
Do you not know how to do this?
Yeah.
Would you like me to teach you? You congratulate me, and I say you're welcome.
Yeah. He just called me out. I was like, I don't know. He's like, how are you going to fix that? I was like, I don't know. He's like, what spiritual reading are you doing to improve this part of your life? I'm reading Lord of the Rings. I mean, I'm not, he just made me realize I actually wasn't doing anything to really improve my spiritual life. I wasn't doing anything to get closer to God. I was comparing myself to nothing. My atheist friends who were just, I'm better than them. Like, at least I believe and I go to mass. I'm doing X, Y, and Z, But they're doing ABC, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. And it was just made me see how arrogant I was. Put myself on a pedestal because, oh, look at me, I'm the good guy. I go to mass and I say some prayers sometimes. And it was like a really holy grab by the scruff of the neck and say, look up, like you're called to be a saint. You're called to be the best version of yourself. And he just called me in a few home truths. And again, I'd been catechized gradually that week and realised, and teaching in a Catholic school, having gone through 14 years of Catholic education, I think I was teaching heresy. I just didn't know what I was doing. I was like, okay, the church teaches this, but here's what I think might work better. I went totally serious. Like,
yeah,
and
I know, man.
And people would have asked me when I was younger, would you ever think of being a priest? Like, because the criteria was, you go to mass and you believe in God. So therefore, you should be a priest. And I remember thinking, no, I couldn't give my life to something that's so flawed. I couldn't give my life to something that's so, behind the times. I just, couldn't do it. That was my understanding of the church. And I was 26 at this time. It was the first time I'd met an on-fire Catholic. So I'm in confessions, and he calls me in a few home truths, and he stops me because I said I felt like I was coasting through life. I had this girlfriend. I had, I was teaching teaching a maternity leave.
You with Katherine at this point?
Yeah. We did it for like maybe a year, and he just stopped me. He was like, "When are you going to get married?" I was like, I'm 24, 25. Catherine's just out of college. I mean, I want to be responsible. I want to get a job. I want to be able to afford a house and stuff to provide. And he's like, could you make it work? And I was like, could you make it work? And I was like, maybe. He says, if this is your vocation, if you know as the person you're going to marry, if you know this is your path to heaven, your path to sanctity, what are you waiting for? And I was like, I actually don't know. I don't know what I'm waiting for. He says, because the only thing that's going to stop you is more distractions, more things that aren't as important, more temptations. If you can make it work, can you make it work? I was like, aye. And then he called, I'm going through my whole confession, but I had no concept of mortal sin or venial sin. And I now had. So I went to him and I was like, Father, does this mean I probably shouldn't have been receiving Holy Communion? He didn't even say anything. He looked at me and was like, and it broke me. It broke me. I was just like, because I just realised the day before he's actually there. It's real. Jesus is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist. So I left the confessional. I went into adoration for my penance. And again, it hasn't really happened to me since, but I completely broke down. I was inconsolable. I was so sorry. I was so sorry for everything I'd done, for everything I knew was wrong in my heart of hearts, for the times I turned away from God, for my friends and my family who I also knew. I was so sorry for them as well. I was like, this is the worst. Katherine was beside me. She was like, what's up with you? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. And then we'd laugh and I'd be like, just crying again. I couldn't even look at our Lord in the Eucharist. I couldn't even look at him. I was so sorry. And then just complete peace. Like, those things that were holding me back from being the best version of myself were just lifted out of my heart and they were gone. And that's the grace of the sacraments. That's the grace. I mean, we scour the earth looking for peace, looking for a happiness the world can't give. And we'll spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars and pounds and euro and therapists and different new age stuff and all these things looking for it. And I'll tell you where I found it. In confession and the Eucharist. Because the world can help us cope with our guilt and deal with it, but only the Lord can take it away.
Ooh, amen.
Only He can, take it out of your heart and give you a new start and give you the grace to do better, And that changed my life. I could have sat there to now in adoration beside Katherine, just effusive with the grace of God. It was unbelievable. So the next day then, I was praying before Our Lady in the apparition. And again, the story of Fatima, people who don't know it, is just, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The saints, St. Jacinta, St. Francisco, please God, hopefully someday St. Lucia, and what Our Lady did there and how she appeared, the miracles she performed and what she told them. It's a phenomenal story and the visions they had. So I was praying before her. I was really like, my priest friend had told me, he's like, leave your heart with Our Lady. Like, give your heart to Mary. And obviously I didn't know what Marian consecration was, but essentially I made my consecration to Our Lady. I was like, look, you take my heart. It belongs to you now. I'm yours.
Yeah.
And she more or less she more or less, I don't like using the word, but she kind of spoke to me. And things just sort of burst out of my heart that it was just, Katherine, you've got to look after her. You got to protect her. She's the flower. This is it. And I was just like, okay, like crying my eyes out again, like, oh, okay. So we come home from Fatima and just in love with being a Catholic. Just utterly in love with being
Did Katherine
a Catholic.
have a similar
She did,
profound experience as
It was
you?
one of the most greatest graces that we have. She just came with me lockstep.
Wow.
Now, I was the one getting the, like, just my mind being blown. She was just seeing what was happening. She was listening to this priest as well. She was with this group and she was praying to Our Lady, and we both came together step by step, which is a phenomenal grace, you know. So we came home and I knew things had to change. So with engaged.
Beautiful.
And I was like, this is it. And we poured ourselves into the preparation for marriage. Went to mass every day, adoration every day, and really trying to learn and be the best, please God, husband and father and wife and spouse and mother we could possibly be. And that was a joy. That was an absolute joy. But certain things had to change because we were one way and then now we were another. So the first thing was on a Friday evening in the church we were getting married in, there was mass and adoration. But my football training got changed to a Friday evening. And I had to make a call. I was like, go and prepare with my friends to be the best footballer I could be and prepare for the next season and go and lift weights and go onto the pitch and train, or go with my future spouse to be the best husband and father I could be and please God get to heaven with her. And it was a no-brainer. I just quit football. I just let it go. It was a disordered attachment in my life. Now, I'm not saying sport is the training ground of the virtues. I mean, I learned so much from sport, and I'll get to that in a minute. You know, so much the discipline and desire and hunger and drive and determination and perseverance that you get from that. You can really apply it to your spiritual life. I mean, St. John Paul II called it, athletics, the training ground of the virtues. And I still enjoy it, and I always coach sport. If I teach in a school or I'm involved, I love coaching sport. I love getting guys ready to go to war. Like, I mean, my dad's a sports coach. I grew up watching him in the locker room, watching him get guys ready to go to war. It's a great, obviously in the most charitable way, within the rules of the game, But you want to rip their heads off. So that was one big change, and it was a change I'd made with joy, but it was hard because of my family and who we were. That was a big call to make at 20.
Yeah, how did your family and friends and fellow sportsmates respond to this change in you?
My father came with us every step of the way, and I don't know how we'd done it without him. He saw something in us, something different, and we went to go to adoration every day, and our priest gave us permission to expose for my father to expose and repose, because he was a Eucharistic minister, right? So again, not going to say that was ideal, but that's what the priest gave us the permission to do, and he would just watch us, and then just started staying with us, and he would stay with us and stay with us. So, like, for pretty much the entire year, it was just me, my future wife, and my dad, just in adoration. And it really sort of reignited his passion and fervour for the faith, because what would have been a faith that was caught and lived was now something being fed intellectually and being fed with answers to questions and lived out more, probably, dynamically, or just more authentically. I mean, there's no other word to say it. It was like, this is an unbelievable life experience. It's an unbelievable life-changing moment when you realise the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church. Jesus is present in the Eucharist. Grace is real, and this changes our lives, So my friends were very confused. I'll use one example. I got them into Game of Thrones. I'd read the books. I'd watched the series. I got them into it. I came back like, no, guys, we can't watch. This is real. This is.
So what year was this then?
This is 2014.
Wow.
2014 into 2015, and quitting the sport, because I was Mr. Gung Ho at sport. Like, I was busting myself. I was getting the guys to come to training. I was getting them to come and to lift themselves and be better. And I give a few of them my testimony. Some of them came to Fatima with me the next year. Some of them were like bemused toleration. Thankfully, there was no open hostility from my friends. There were times, family members and stuff. It was rough. I won't go into it, but I mean, it was a tough year. It was a tough year trying to make those changes, because some of the friends I had to drop. I mean, like for an Irish Catholic, when I came back, I did something pretty unthinkable, right? I opened the Bible.
What?
Yeah. Like, this is like, we have the Mass, Protestants have the Bible, right? And it's just like, you don't want, that's not for us. And I started reading, I was like, okay, liar, Lord, lunatic. The trilemma is like, either he is who he says he is or he's not. And I realised he is who he says he is. And he's actually spoken to us. So I better figure out what he said. It might actually have an impact on my life. So I remember beginning reading Matthew's Gospel. And a number of passages utterly changed my life. I remember where I was specifically when I read them. The first one was, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you have already committed adultery with her in your heart. And here's me in adoration, preparing to be the best husband and father I could possibly be. And I was just like, if you look, like, what? Like, huh?
When did they add that to the Bible?
It's like, surely he couldn't have meant that. Because every TV show, billboard, magazine, movie trains men to objectify women and use them that way for our own gratification. That's just it's just the air we breathe. So I remember like talking, like walking down the street, looking at the pavement, being like, how do I look at a woman now? Like how do I talk to a woman without like checking out and objectifying her? And I asked my priest friend, like, Father, what do I do? And he was like, look, you just get on your knees and you pray for purity. Do you know what I mean? Jesus called us to this purity of heart. It's a grace he's there, he's prepared to give us. So you get on your knees every morning, you pray for purity, you pray 3 Hail Marys, you pick saints, St. Joseph, St. Maria Gorelli, St. Gemma Galliani, and you just go to confessions and you keep going and you pick up, because sometimes you want to change everything in the spiritual life. When really we pick one thing and pray about it and work on it until we see a change and then move on. And he was like, look, do this, say your prayers, pray for purity, and keep going to confessions and it'll come. And again, only by the grace of God can I look my wife in the face and say, I don't look at other women. Because I wanted to be that for her. I want to be the best father and husband I could be. Now, if it's even a hint of a fall or a furtive glance, that's why confessions is there. Yeah. As a protection for us. It's a complete grace. The other one was the love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, and how I had to literally, if this is real, if this is legit, I have to pray for and forgive the men that murdered my sister. I have to do that. That's what God's calling me to. Who am I to hold that back from them? I have to wish them in heaven with me someday. And that's so out of this world, like otherworldly. I mean, it's literally dog eat dog, a rat race. You get your own back in revenge, whereas Jesus gives us something different, and again, the grace to follow through with it. And the other one was to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. That spoke to me as a sportsman, because I was looking for every inch to be the best sportsman I could be. I mean, I was like weighing my food, the protein shakes, the recovery sessions, all those things. And I was like, wow, that's a high call. Like, we're called to be the best version of ourselves. We're literally called to be saints. And that just, I applied then, as I said, the training I got in sport to my spiritual life. And my coach, my final year of sport, had a mantra for us we're going to use, right? He gave the example of British rowers. So forgive me if my dates are wrong, right? I think it was, what was Beijing? Was Beijing 2008?
I don't know.
I think it was 2004 Olympics. They didn't do really well. And they said, in 4 years' time in Beijing, we are going to win Olympic gold. Mm-hmm. And we're going to ask ourselves one question. Will it make the boat go faster? So this new training regime, will it make the boat go faster? Yeah, let's do it. This new diet regime, make the boat go faster? Yes, let's do it. This extra session today, will it make the boat go faster? Yeah, let's do it. Bringing in the best coaches, make the boat go faster? Yes, let's do it. Going out for pints with our friends at this time? No. Eating this takeaway, eating this diet, choosing this lifestyle choice, won't make the boat go faster? We don't do it. So I just flipped it and I was like, will it help me and the ones I love get to heaven? Will it help me become a saint and the ones I love get to heaven? If the answer is yes, let's do it. If the answer is no, we have to say no. So praying the rosary every day, absolutely. It's going to give me grace. It's going to help me and my family get to heaven. Let's do it. Trying to get to Mass every day, absolutely. Our Lord is there. The grace is accessible. Help us be the best version of ourselves. Regular confessions, going to these studies with this priest and asking questions and learning about the faith, absolutely. Let's do it. Staying in a WhatsApp group or a GroupMe group of guys who are posting in indecent images, I can't justify that. It's leading me to sin. It's an occasion of sin. It's leading me to the confessional. Hang out with friends who are living a very different lifestyle and who are leading me away from my faith. I can't justify that. Watching certain things on TV and movies, that I can't justify that. When I'm in adoration before our Lord and these things are coming to my head, and again, it's not a puritanical, oh, this is all bad. It's St. Paul, like, choose what's good, what's beautiful, what's true, the things that are going to give you joy and peace. You know, fill your heart and mind with those things. And that high call, it made me realize something that a priest friend said to me later on. It was like, we're not called to mediocre. The world has, believe me, Ireland has plenty of mediocre Catholics. We're not called to be mediocre Catholics. We're called to be saints. We're called to be the best version of ourselves. And that just drove us on and threw us back into the church, and we were hungry for it, you know. And then that ultimately led to, then I was a substitute teacher for a year, and honestly, if you get a chance to do it, I was like a substitute teacher in good schools. It's like I would walk in, you know, for a full day of teaching, right? The teachers left work for them. They're good kids. Like, how are you? I'm Mr. Harte. You've got work to do. I've got work to do. If you just mind, if you talk and keep it quiet, we'll get on, no problem. I'm reading the lives of the saints. I'm reading the church document. I'm reading these things, being like, oh my goodness, unbelievable. It's like a year of like reading these things. I'm just, again, wanting more of it. I got to teach more religion and theology in schools, and saw like how hungry young people were for it. And I was like, because I was a teacher, I taught high school for 5 years, then 2 years of youth ministry.
And they probably saw in you what you saw in that priest that time.
Well,
a reverence.
Yeah, please God. I mean, those questions, that hunger is there in everybody. And for many of us, particularly in Ireland, we get such, for want of a better term, a watered down nonsense version of the faith. There's no other way to describe it.
Could we move to that kind of topic? You know, just the state of Ireland in general. I mean, so many people have commented on this, that it was once the land of saints and scholars. Well, what is it that you have traded your halos and manuscripts in for? So what is the state of Catholicism in Ireland today?
Is it okay if I give a bit of context and just go back a bit further?
Please, yeah.
So it was the land of saints and scholars. It was a phenomenally fruitful land of Catholic faith, of real piety, and a real contribution to the church. I mean, we'll skip right up until the 14th, 15th century. That's what the Irish Church was. Okay, then you have the political wars in Europe and the Reformation, and then Ireland was a guinea pig in that in many ways, because it was a back door to England, and the French landed there, the Spanish landed there. So the British and the Protestant regime really tried to quash it, and we had a couple of 100 years of real persecution, real suppression of the faith, like a significant book.
Yeah, tell us what that looked like for those who aren't aware.
Yeah. So when the Reformation happened and England became Protestant, Ireland was under British rule. So then that suppression, that closing of monasteries, that taking of church lands, that hanging of the priest from the nearest tree, that jailing of people if they didn't swear an oath of loyalty to the king as the head of the church, the denouncing of popish loyalties, the denouncing of popish priests, like for a long time, the oath to be a member of Parliament included, denouncing the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mass, and the church as idolatrous. So those types of things, how that was manifested on the ground. No churches allowed to be built. Mass was illegal. People would literally have to hide their priests. So, like in different times, they go to Mass rocks. Did you ever visit a Mass rock whenever you were in Ireland? Yes. Yeah. So for those who don't know, there was no churches. Mass was legal, so they went into the forests and they found a flat piece of stone, a nice place that was secluded, usually with maybe a position to look out to see were there any authorities coming. They would have had to walk in ones and twos in complete silence. Somebody would have carried a candlestick, somebody would have carried the breviary or the lectionary, somebody would have carried the vestments, somebody would have carried something else. And only then, whenever people were arrived and looked around and everybody knows everybody, then the priest comes out and he says Mass, sometimes even behind a screen, so the faithful wouldn't actually see his face and be able to give him away. But that was the the depth and the strength of the Irish faith and Irish priesthood, where these priests and bishops were martyred, like hung, and while they were still alive, disemboweled, you know, and brought to England, put on trial for false charges. In many respects in Ireland, trial without jury was done away with. And they really tried to quash the Catholic faith in Ireland, giving incentives that, you know, if you dropped a certain Irishness in your name and you became Protestant, we'll give you more food and money. You know, literally trying to coerce people into the faith. But through that...
How long did that sort of persecution last for?
You're talking 1640s right up until mid 1700s to maybe early 1800s. You know, so roughly, you know, because there was wars, but previous to that there was different rebellions at different times. You know, that was the depth and strength of the Irish priesthood, though, that they were prepared to lie under bushes, in the caves, in fields, to come and feed their flock and give them the sacraments and keep the strength and the burning fire of faith alive in Ireland. That's our heritage. That's a big part of what I think needs to happen in Ireland, is a reclaiming of our narrative. Because our narrative is a tired, old, scandal-ridden, ineffectual and unconvincing church. That's what I understood. That's what I was brought up with.
Yes.
I was 26.
And who wants to be a part of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was 26 before I met a real on-fire Catholic. And he just changed my life. Because we have the answers to the questions, like I said previously.
I had this image of, you know, a sort of smouldering fire, that it just needs to be fanned into flame, and things like you happen in Ireland, you know, when a holy man comes along.
I mean, who was it said that? Like, one Christian being fully Christian, or one Catholic being fully Catholic, can change the world.
Yeah.
You know? And like Ireland has 28 bishops for a population 1 million less than the Archdiocese of Los Angeles.
Wow.
Okay. Now, they're ancient, and there's different reasons for why that's the case. But the minute we have, I think maybe 30 seminarians. So we have roughly the same amount of seminarians as we have bishops. There might be even less seminarians and bishops. But a reclamation of our narrative, and that I never got taught in school the history of the Irish Church. What St. Patrick did and who he was. What the Irish monasteries did and how they ultimately re-evangelized and saved Western civilization by re-evangelizing whole swathes of Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire. Of the martyrs who persevered, who went through persecution, who knew the love of God and lived it to the point of shedding their blood. That's the heritage we have, you know.
I agree that you guys have to reclaim that narrative.
Yeah.
But of course, I think in order to do that, you have to look squarely at the abuses that have taken place and how bad things are in Ireland right now.
Yeah.
I mean, do you agree with that? You'd love the espresso. As opposed to, obviously, you don't want to sweep anything under the rug. You don't want to go, let's stop looking at the reality of Ireland. Let's look back to the glory days.
And hopefully, absolutely.
So, I just share a story here. I remember my wife and I lived in Ireland for 3 years, and while we were there, we were going to run a retreat at a particular retreat center, and I remember, showing up, and I think it was a Benedictine monastery or something, but you've got these priests and their clerics, call me John, okay, Father John, and that sort of thing. And I remember going into their chapel and being surprised because there were yoga mats, all over the floor, and the tabernacle wasn't present. And I wasn't really sure what was going on. And I remember going next door to the library, and in the corner, I was looking at the books, and in the corner on the floor was a tabernacle. And I thought, that can't be the tabernacle. That was surely, maybe this is an old tabernacle. And I bent down and I opened it up because it wasn't locked. And sure enough, the Blessed Sacrament was there. I fell to my knees and sort of made an act of faith and realized that, okay, someone has removed the Blessed Sacrament from the chapel in order to teach yoga. Like that was my kind of impression of where much of Catholic Ireland is. Now there's pockets of hope and tremendous faithful people, 100%. But I think by and large, it feels like that. It's almost like a new paganism. Yeah. I heard somebody say that it's as if, and I'm not making this statement, so you can correct it if you think it's incorrect. It's as if Ireland was like a child who grew up under an abusive parent and then just decided to rebel and just say, okay, we're old enough, we're done with this thing. So yes, speak to that.
So, I mean, we could trade stories back and forth about horrendous things that have happened, but we don't want to scandalise anybody. The abusive parent thing, I think, has truth to it. So we had this incredible faith, we had this persecution, we had this strength. 1930s, 1920s, 1930s, Ireland gets independence. The southern 26 gets independence. Again, I'm from the north, so I still think we were left behind. Anyway, not going to that. They get independence, and the church had such goodwill and such a standing with the people. Such a, you will bat for me, you've got my back, you will come and give me the sacraments, even risk your life. You will support the Catholic emancipation movement in 1820s, where we get the chance to vote and put members of Catholics into Parliament. You will support the repeal of the Act of Union, where we want our own government and we want a Catholic nation. We want to be able to practice our faith. You'll support us in that. You'll come to us and you'll stay with us through thick and thin. The new government brings, and the Irish Church was given an incredible level of deference, an incredible level of authority and social standing. So, I mean, the nuncio of the Pope was given one of the former estates of the British administration. That's where he was. This is our guy now. You know, that the crown and the English are gone type thing. And when it comes to schools, they're all Catholic schools. Universities, Catholic universities. Hospitals, Catholic hospitals. Politics, people take their cue from the bishops. Okay, so that context explains the kind of abusive parent thing where we get, where it's like our trust was so deep and the status of the priest in our society was so high that the fall then went so far. I moved to America in August 18, right after the grand jury reports, right after the Carolyn McCarrick, and I was like, God, what am I, from one place to the other? It's like, jeepers, what are we doing here, you know? I don't want to compare scandals, but because Ireland is small and virtually everybody had a priest or a nun or religious in some part of their family, that hurt was so much deeper. And because of the status of the priest, the fall was further, and then there was a real reaction, and the church almost took the place of the British in the oppressor, in the, you're the one that's holding us back from our freedoms, you're the one that's, because coupled with that, there was a tendency towards Jansenism in the Irish church and clergy. You know, the fire, hell, brimstone, nobody's worthy, you know, legalism, and a real, you know, do this or else type thing. I mean, that's what my mother grew up with that. She grew up almost afraid of the Sacred Heart image, because she was like, oh, God's watching this, and I'm gonna do, you know, which is obviously the opposite of what that was meant to be.
Indeed.
So that's what they grew up with.
In fact, the Sacred Heart was a response to Jansenism.
Exactly. So that's what they grew up with, and there was too much political power, too much socialist standing, too much deference. There was a clericalism. There was awful, horrendous abuses.
I've never heard it put like that before, and that just really hit the nail on the head for me, that the Irish people view the Catholic Church today the way the Irish people once viewed the English.
Yeah.
That's really profound. Yeah. You're the ones holding us back. We have to throw you off. You're the oppressor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And because of the 60s, which happened all over the world, and because Ireland was kind of slower to get into that. I mean, like legal divorce was still illegal in Ireland until 1985. I mean, that's like people voted in 1983 an amendment to the Constitution to protect the unborn. They voted in 2-1.
Glory to God.
But then they removed it.
Yeah. Were you there when that happened?
I was.
Tell us what that was like, and just kind of recap for people watching who are like, what happened in Ireland?
Yeah. So
because
there was 2 referendums in quick succession in Ireland. After the scandals, there was a real sense in which the church, corporate, not just our bishops, not just our priests, not just lay Catholics, church had lost its moral authority and lost its ability to talk on things. And you were holding us to this standard, but you guys were all doing this. Like, how dare you try and speak to us about morality? How dare you speak to us about what we're supposed to do, not do? That coupled with then the reports that went into that. So like there was like grand jury type reports into this.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine says he remembers whenever they were released, the next day at Sunday Mass, it was like people weren't there. And he thought, oh, they'll come back in a few weeks. And they didn't. And you had mass attendance from 1980s, 90s of like 78, 80%. up until 2015, which is like 33% now, maybe slightly less. So that culmination of scandals and a move away and a secularization. I mean, like, my parents grew up without electricity. So that secularization brought about a set of circumstances that the church wasn't ready for. I still think we're not equipped to deal with it. We had a very pious people, a people of faith, deep faith. But as Father Vincent Toomey says, there was an anti-intellectualism. They weren't a thinking church. They weren't a church able to respond to the questions and to the challenges of society, and even speak on moral issues, to give arguments, and they weren't used to defending their faith. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd ask somebody a question why you believe. Oh, you believe or you don't ask questions. And that's not going to satisfy somebody who's coming through a modern secular culture where they're YouTube atheists and, you know, these different exposed things in movies and agendas and things. You're like, well, obviously it's not true. Obviously it's not real, you know? So that culminated then in 15 or 16? There was a referendum on redefining marriage. And again, there were heroic people and lay people and trying to fight the cause. But it's virtually...
It's like trying to stand against a tidal wave.
Absolutely. And like, when somebody comes at you with an emotional argument of, do you not want people to love?
Yeah, why do you hate people? Why are you on the wrong side of history? You want to be on the wrong side of history.
That line is just... And it doesn't help whenever you have a church leader, a bishop, come out and say that a Catholic can vote in good conscience for same-sex marriage.
You're kidding.
Mm-hmm.
God have mercy on him.
And the confusion, the lack of wanting to really go at it because they've lost their moral authority. And it was voted in, maybe, I can't remember the exact stats, maybe like 60%, 40 or something like that, maybe slightly less. Then you fast forward 2 years later and there's a referendum on abortion, and it was brutal. It was like, I was canvassing door to door, going to events and rallies, trying to get people, and I was teaching in a school at the time, trying to convince these young people. Was there
ever a sense that this might happen? We might keep abortion outlawed in this country, or did you feel like you were fighting a losing battle to begin with?
I had hope. We all had hope. The fact that more people voted against same-sex marriage than against abortion in the space of 2 years kind of shows you the demographic of Ireland. The older, faithful, conservative generation are just going. And I've taught the next generation coming through, and they're just products of their society. I mean, in the South, where these referendums happened, 96% of our schools are Catholic schools, which means 96% of the people who voted in those referendums are sacramentalized, who've been through Catholic education. So we have to ask ourselves the question.
It's almost like those were the two death nails for overthrowing Catholicism in Ireland, right? We're going to redefine marriage, and we're going to allow abortion, and we're going to celebrate these two things. It really feels like substituting the true Christian faith for Satanism.
Yeah, absolutely. But the damage was done in the years prior to that. I mean, the people voted how they were formed to vote.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So we have to look back further and say, well, how did that come about and what happened, you know? And the lack of intellectual formation, lack of catechesis was a big part of that, you know. We have great people in our church at home. We have very faithful Catholics. We have, you know, some priests who are really holy men who are fighting the good fight. Yeah. And we have bishops who, you know, who are good men.
Father Rory Brady would be a man I would point to. You know Father Rory?
I do know him.
Good friend, holy priest.
But there's different categories of leadership in the church, I suppose. Over here in America, you've got generals. I think you've got warriors. I think you've got people who will say, like, I'll take the fight to these people, and if you get behind me, we'll do it. And like, I want to get behind you. You've other ones who are just good men, who are faithful, and they want to support good things, but they're just not equipped to go and take on the culture that way. And then you've other bishops who you have serious questions over what actually is going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
whether they have living faith at all.
Well, yeah. I mean, that the lack of it being equipped, in many respects, sometimes is not the fault of those who are there present now. It's what happened previously, in that we didn't get the catechesis, we didn't get the formation. We were training people for a maintenance mode church where it's just like you're a good administrator and you're doing things and things are fine the way they are. all our schools are Catholic. We're still getting sacraments. We're still getting people evangelized. In the census, people are still saying, I'm Catholic. You know, it's like we're getting along with things. But to steal an analogy from Father Mike Smith's, everybody should steal analogies from Father Mike Smith.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's great.
If you have the best, say you're making cars, right? You have the best will in the world. You have the best motivated workers. You have the best processes, materials. And everybody's really excited. But you don't produce any cars.
Mm-hmm.
You're a terrible car manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
And something's really, really going wrong. And if we're sitting with 96% of our schools as Catholics and not producing any Catholics, something's desperately wrong. And again, C.S. Lewis talked about this. There was was it a foreword for a book or an article he wrote discussing whether England was still Christian at the time, back in the 40s. And he said, if children came out of school suddenly not knowing their sums, not knowing math, we wouldn't be saying, math has failed us. You know, we have to really think about math. You know, what math is, you know, what crisis in math. No. We've just stopped teaching them math. It's the same thing with the faith. It's like we just stopped teaching the truth of the faith. We've just stopped catechizing people. We've stopped giving them a convincing and articulate argument for the truth. So that in schools, again, some of the best will in the world, but people who don't know the faith, teaching young people the faith, people who don't believe in God or don't believe in the sacraments, teaching young people the sacraments, leads to a disillusionment. And young people can sense inauthenticity. They can see straight through somebody who doesn't believe.
Yeah, there's a real oppressive, it felt that way for me while I was there for 3 years, this sort of oppression that I felt as I would try to proclaim the gospel, and we would try to start little small groups or rosary groups or do pilgrimages. And I think part of it is you had just this like intense Catholic culture. You have all the beautiful churches still there, but as you say, just overnight that all flipped, and so it's like trying to push, I don't know, this gigantic boulder up a hill. What signs of hope do you see taking place in Ireland right now? And yeah, what do you think the solution is? You've talked about restoring our narrative, which I agree with, but what else?
So the first thing, and I probably should have prefaced this at the very beginning, I was asked to give a talk up in Derry to a parish. Essentially, the talk was sort of the state of the church in Ireland. And my initial reaction was, oh, this is wrong, and this is terrible, and these guys need to do this, and this. And I was like, whoa, hold on a minute. Our church is perfect. Like capital P, perfect. Why? Because it's the Church of Jesus Christ. It's his mystical body. His grace is perfect. The sacraments, the grace, the church in Ireland changed my life. Mm-hmm. Like, utterly changed my life. Blew my mind. And transformed who I am as a man. I'm a better man, I'm a better husband, I'm a better father for what the church and Christ has done in my life. That's the first and foremost. In its manifestations, in its members, sometimes, obviously, we make mistakes, we're sinners, we fall. As St. Paul says, we have heavenly treasure in earthen vessels. So macro, the church is perfect. So we have the answers. We have to have confidence in that. We have to reclaim that. We have to have, the knowledge of the truth in order to convince it, wrestle with it. But practically, there are like movements like U2000 where there are a couple of thousand young people coming together to worship our Lord, to grow in their faith, to do some sort of formation. We have solid priests in certain areas who are trying to do their best and fighting the good fight. But can I quote Braveheart?
Always.
Why wouldn't you quote Braveheart?
Father Mike Schmitz, then Braveheart, in that order.
C.S. Lewis is in there. I give myself some credit.
Yeah, he's got to go above Father Mike Schmitz.
There's a line in Braveheart where William Wallace comes out with the squabbling of the nobles, and Robert the Bruce follows him out. Yes. And he says, we need the nobles. And he's like, what do you mean we need the nobles? What does it mean to be noble? And he says, William Wallace says to him, your title gives you claim to the throne of Scotland. But people don't follow titles, they follow courage. They know you and they respect you. If you would just lead them to freedom, we'd follow you, and so would I. And I'm just like...
That was a powerful line.
Oh my God, I'm just like, if you would just lead us, we get behind you. We go to war for you, But Cardinal Pell, in his first set of prison diaries, spoke about Ireland. And it gave me a bit of a sucker punch. You know the way, like, if you're, you know, something's happening, like, I'm putting on a bit of weight. Oh, no, you're fine. You don't see it every day. But somebody I haven't seen in a couple of years, like, whoa, jeepers, you're getting a bit heavy there, you know, since I came to America anyway.
Yeah.
And it was like the outside perspective of Cardinal Pell talking about Ireland brought it was like, oh.
What did he say?
He was speaking about Ireland on St. Patrick's Day whenever he was in prison, and he was just like, sort of, what's happened to Ireland? Has all the good blood gone abroad? As in, like, gone to America and gone to Australia. When Archbishop Charles Brown was there, Pope Benedict was very sympathetic to the Irish. Pope Benedict wrote a pastoral letter to Ireland 2010.
I was there.
In response. You were there for that?
Yeah. I remember it being read from the pulpit.
Yeah. And he was like, if there's good leadership, you could avoid a Quebec, Holland type collapse. And he says there were no bad appointments, but they were still beholden to the bishops' conference. A bishop has to really plant a flag, take a stand and say, we're going to reform the school curriculum, or we're going to do something outside of the system, because the government's pushing heavily on agendas and you have to teach this regardless of your ethos. And it's quite scary. I mean, you're virtually guaranteed, if you send your child to a Catholic school in Ireland, that they will not come out practicing their faith. Okay? So that's the scary thought, scary reality. Then he said, our seminary has to change and form a new one. I mean, I'm going to speak from my experience now. Again, who am I to say? I'm not a bishop. I'm not a priest. I've never been a parish priest. People are weird. If you're working in a parish, you know people are weird. Like, it's a tough station, especially in a culture where the media are against you, the government are against you, and the schools are not in your favour either, you know. So you got to give incredible sympathy and empathy towards what's happening for our bishops and our priests. But I know some of the best priests I know were kicked out of Maynooth, were kicked out of our seminary.
Yeah.
One particular guy blew the whistle on some bad behaviour. He was kicked out, and the bad behaviour guys got to stay. You've got serious issues with our formation. And for want of a better term, I don't think it's rocket science. It's like, you look at Chaput, Aquila, you look at George, you look at these guys in America who've turned things around, who've transformed their diocese, who've really brought a renewal and an incredible grace of fire and faith back to their diocese. We're, as Cardinal Pell says, we need that. We need to tackle our schools. We need to tackle the seminary. We need to tackle certain aspects of what it is to be Catholic again. They're beginning some sort of like a signal discussion path type thing. I've no idea what way that's going to turn out.
I just get so disappointed when I hear that there's another meeting that's going to happen and we're going to get really bloody serious about it now. I'm like, this will come to nothing. We need saints who are on fire, who speak truth, who aren't afraid to offend, who don't seek to offend, but who aren't afraid to offend, and who love passionately and speak clearly and boldly, who love the Lord, who love the Eucharist, who love Our Lady. That's what we need. We don't need more meetings. We don't need more bloody... Anyway.
I think Father Vincent Toomey is really good on this. He said that.
Who's that?
Father Vincent Toomey is... he was actually a doctoral student under then Cardinal Ratzinger. He's an impressive guy. You might want to look him up and check him out. He was a moral theologian for years. He studied under Ratzinger and then came back and taught in Ireland and taught in like maybe some other missionary territories. But he wrote a book in the early 2000s called "The End of Irish Catholicism?" ? And he made a really important distinction that the answer is no. The answer is an end to a certain form or type of Irish Catholicism. One that was akin to Christendom, where you had the mores and traditions and you had the people and the government and everybody on side and the media on side. Whereas, like, you know, the people who are faithful, as, you know, again, Cardinal Ratzinger, when he spoke, the church in the future will be smaller and more sure of itself, and then more able to go and bring that to the world when man discovers its poverty, when everything else, an atheistic worldview, collapses on itself, you know. So he's very good on that, and he says the throwing off, we're not hearkening back to a time of, you know, where we were because that's never going to come back again. It's never going to be that way because of where Ireland was at the time. We're in a period of rebuilding, of trying to recatechize, of trying to, and again, he's big on making atonement for what happened in the abuses, offering a day of atonement, first Friday of Lent every year for what happened, and everybody taking that on. He's also critical of a lack of theological critical tradition in the Irish church, again, the non-thinking, unthinking church of what it was, that we are able to then give a convincing, articulate argument of the truth to the next generation coming through, because they want it and they recognize it. And again, thanks be to God, I've seen that teaching in schools, working in youth ministry. They're hungry for it. They're really hungry for it, you know. And I have hope. I have hope because Jesus has already won. He's conquered. We have to live out that victory. The gates of hell will not prevail against the church. So we have to then get used to going back to the hedges, going back to the place of being marginalised.
Living in mission territory.
Absolutely.
Despite the church bells and the Angelus that may still be appearing on some TV, right? It's almost like it gives us a false sense that things are okay. They're not okay, and we're starting again.
Mm-hmm. Like if you walk 10 minutes, roughly 10-15 minutes in any direction in Ireland, you'll find a tabernacle.
Yeah.
You'll find a church. You know, our Lord is everywhere, and we have a history and tradition that's just second to none. And what we've done across the world for different countries and stuff, you know. And coming to America, actually, we were humbled to see the sort of the thanks people had for what the Irish church did for them, and the nuns and priests who taught them and who gave them the faith, and the sort of the heritage they were given there. That was a real humbling thing for us, you know, to witness and to see. And I know so many Irish Americans that want to go back and to help the Irish mission.
I was going to say, that must be really heartening to you, seeing good people coming back to Ireland to evangelize her, like the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal.
Yeah. I mean, there's a real desire there. Like, I mean, real. People really want to do this. They want to go back and help the Irish. And it is very heartening. It's very, it's hoping and trusting that God's not going to forget the 1,500 years of Catholicism that Ireland had, the missionary things that we did across the world, and to reclaim that through our Irishness and being authentically Catholic will make it stronger and a better place to bring it to the new modern Ireland, you know. That's why, and that's a big thing about a big lesson I learned through the whole journey was that never let it rob your joy. That's fantastic, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because we could... Pessimism is so much easier. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, and bashing leadership and bashing our priests and it's like, no. Do you belong to him or not? Has he changed your life or not? Has he given you a peace and a joy the world can't give? And surely to God we have righteous anger at certain things, and righteous anger, rightly so, at certain times. But a peace and joy that's you know, the as our Lord says, you've built your house on rock, and the waters came and the storm came and it was strong, but it stood firm, you know. We have to have that joy and peace, because ultimately that's what's going to be infectious. That's what people are going to be attracted to, you know. Yeah. Well, okay, what I want to do is take a 2-minute break, and then when we come back, I want to talk to you about being a pioneer and why it is you've chosen to give up alcohol for forever, or at least till heaven. I'm not sure if they'll have beer in heaven or not. I hope so. And we'll then take some questions in the live chat. So let's do that now. Perfect. Cool. Thanks. I want to say thank you to Homeschool Connections. Go check them out at homeschoolconnections.com/Matt. This is an excellent resource if you want your kids to have great presenters to teach them different classes, and you want them to be faithful to the teachings of the Catholic Church. So they've got presenters like Tim Staples, Trent Horn, who teach apologetics. How cool would that be to have your kids being taught apologetics? That's amazing by these guys. Also Joseph Pierce, who teaches literature. Erin Brown, who designed the Aquinas Writing Advantage program. So this is a really excellent resource, as I say. Maybe you just want your child to have a couple of lessons thrown into the repertoire you already teach, or maybe you
want them to just learn by going to Homeschool Connections, but this is definitely a great place. So go check it out. You can register for a single course or an entire suite of courses with over 200 live interactive courses to choose from this school year and over 450 recorded courses. You have what you need to make sure your students are educated in the Catholic tradition. And also, because it's really affordable, you can continue to do homeschooling on a budget. Go check them out. homeschoolconnections.com/Matt. homeschoolconnections.com/Matt. Be sure to click that link in the description below. It'll send you right over there. That way they'll know that we sent you. I also want to say thank you to Hallow. Hallow is an excellent app that will help you to pray and meditate. There are many apps out there that help people meditate, but many of them are mingled with all this sort of new age nonsense that we don't want to get wrapped up in. What's great about Hallow is it's a very sophisticated app, but it's also 100% Catholic. It's actually the #1 downloaded app as far as Catholic apps are concerned on the iTunes Store, and for really good reasons. It'll help you to pray, to meditate. It even has sleep stories from people like Jonathan Rumi and Father Mike Schmitz and things like this. So you can download the app right now. But if you want to get access to the entire app, go to hallow.com/Matt Fradd today. Click the link in the description below. And when you sign up there, it'll give you a month for free. So you can actually try everything out on the app before committing to it. My wife and I have used it, and we're actually really big fans, and we think you will be too. So go check them out. hallow.com/Matt Fradd, hallow.com, that's HALLOW.com/Matt Fradd. All right, now back to the discussion. All right, how's that cold espresso going for you?
It's an experience.
Now the reason that we're
more cultured.
What you need is that with sushi, and then wash it down with a bit of kombucha. All right, so the reason you're drinking coffee, of course, and we're not having beer, is that you don't drink alcohol, and you've got this funny-looking pin thing. It's not funny. It's actually quite respectable. Tell us about this and why it is you chose to become a pioneer.
Yeah. So just for, again, the American listeners, pioneer has a connotation of, like, go west, and it's not that type of connotation, It's a pioneer, and at the time, I think it's not, hard to realise Ireland had a problem with alcohol, and still does in many ways. A Jesuit priest, Father James Cullen, in 1898, founded a temperance movement devoted to the Sacred Heart to make reparation for those who struggle with alcohol. And he started with it with 4 women, because he saw how women were struggling from the men and the family drinking and leading to poverty, leading to bad things. It's not a puritanical, prohibitionist, alcohol is bad and evil. I mean, you look at our Lord, what are you doing at the wedding feast? Giving
out pioneer pins. No.
So it's not that.
Yeah.
It's an offering in reparation to the Sacred Heart for those who struggle with alcohol. I'm a 3rd generation pioneer, so my grandfather on my mum's side was an alcoholic. So my granny took the pin, and all you do is wear the pin, say a very short prayer twice a day, which I'll say in a wee minute, and promise to stay off alcohol. So she took it for him and refused to marry my granddad until he became a pioneer. And like at one point in the 50s and 60s, 1 in 3 people in Ireland were pioneers. That was the popularity of it, So on my dad's side, one of his great uncles, I think, was an alcoholic, and his father and his brothers took it. So my dad was one. So both my parents are, all my siblings. By the time it came to me, it was just, oh, you're Irish, you're Catholic, you love football, and you're a pioneer. That was part of the whole package, and I was really proud to be that, and wore my pin throughout school. And then, but as I came more into the faith, it took on more depth of meaning for me. It took on a greater, oh wow, like I'm praying for those who struggle with alcohol. And I've met alcoholics, recovering alcoholics, and told them, like, I've been praying for you my whole life. So have thousands and thousands of Irish people across the country. I've met a mission trip to Zambia. I met pioneers in Zambia because they were struggling with alcohol as well. So
how old were you when you decided to take the pen, and what's that?
Oh, well, I've never drank, so...
I know, but like, you must have made a decision for it.
Yeah, so there's like a junior pin. So like you're a junior member until you're 18, and then 18 you become an adult member.
But who talked you into it, or
who
suggested it to you?
It wasn't even a thing. That drink was never in our house.
Yeah.
It was just, I want to be like my dad.
Yeah.
I want to be like my mum.
But did you know he was a pioneer?
Yeah, so he wore the pin.
Drink?
So he wore the pin.
So there's a kind of respect around it.
Yeah.
And you were like, I'm going to do this too.
Yeah. And a number of things. So when the first brother of my dad's house died, we were in the wake room, and my brother, when you're 25 years a pioneer, you get a silver pin with a silver ring around it. He was in his coffin with his 25-year pin, and his 7 brothers were standing in a line with their 25-year pins, and I was like,
that's cool.
I think, whoa, that's a legacy. That's my family. That's my heritage. I want to be like those men. That's a real example and witness to me as a young man. I want to be that for my family. But it was caught rather than taught. It was never like alcohol's bad, alcohol's evil, you can't do this, can't do that. It was just this is the story. This is who we are. And if you want to do it, I think for my eldest brother, it was probably the biggest call for him because he was the first one. And once he decided to do it.
So is it talked about at first Holy Communion prep?
Yeah. Sorry. So whenever you get confirmed, we get confirmed at 12 years old, right before we go into high school. So again, you go like different types of school from like 4 to 11 is elementary, and then 11, 12 to 18 is high school. So there's no middle school. You get confirmed before you go to high school at age 12, and in my time, everybody took the pledge to stay off alcohol till they were 18, and it was a big deal if you broke your pledge before you underage drank, because legal age for drinking is 18. Excuse me. And you also got a prayer card of Matt Talbot. Oh. And like, he's a phenomenal,
what a guy.
phenomenal
Venerable
man.
Matt Talbot. Just quickly tell us who he is, because his story is remarkable.
So he was a worker in Dublin, really, really bad alcoholic, would have sold his shoes, stole a busker's violin to pay money for alcohol, and whenever he got some money, he would buy alcohol for everybody else. Whenever he was in the dumps, they wouldn't reciprocate, and he ended up being like a really low point, and had a big conversion. Became a pioneer, took off, broke his addiction, and became an ascetic essentially. Really read up on his faith, went to mass daily, maybe even more than once a day, and wore chains in reparation for different things.
Under his clothes.
Under his clothes, yeah. And just a quiet, humble, holy man. Like people only realised the depth of his holiness once he died, and discovered the books he was reading in his room, discovered the chains, and realised this guy lived an ascetic and beautiful and holy life in reparation, and is a real model and a real saint of those, because please God he'll be canonised. He's venerable at the minute. Please God he'll be canonised to be a saint. But like for me personally, that choice, I suppose, like my friends would have pushed me, like, oh, well, you're only a pioneer because your family are. I pushed back, like, well, you're only Irish because your family are. Like, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? You know, like, I recognise the good in it. I recognise the offering. I recognise the truth behind it. I want to do this. It's just a positive life choice.
Really cool.
Yeah, and my friends always benefited from me driving them home after nights out, and their parents
they
always
weren't laughing then. They're all thanking me.
Yeah, and their parents loved seeing me come. But just one quick story about it.
Just bring that a little closer.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Yeah.
My wife. Okay. We're not related. Now, every good story starts with "we're not related." Right? We're not related. But good. 40 years previous.
You sound a bit defensive. I don't know.
40 years previously, my uncle on my dad's side married her aunt on her dad's side. Okay. So that like 40 years ago we had in-laws. Listen, like I grew up knowing my cousins had cousins called the McGures, and my wife has cousins called the Harts, but we're not related.
Okay.
Right?
To be very clear.
As I said in my wedding speech, just two good families come together twice. That's all it is. And at the funeral, at my sister's funeral, one of the things we do in Ireland is like people would, prior to the liturgy beginning, would bring up different mementos of the person's life. And I brought up my sister's pioneer pin. But I didn't realise that my aunt-in-law, so Katherine's aunt, who was helping out with the liturgy, couldn't find my sister's spare pin. My sister was buried in her wedding dress with her pin on, and couldn't find her spare pin. So she actually asked Katherine for hers. So at my sister's funeral, there was thousands of people there. Katherine was actually there watching on a big screen in the car park. I was carrying up my future wife's pin at the altar at my sister's funeral, And we didn't discover this. We didn't meet for a year. Didn't discover this until after a year of dating.
Wow.
And this has become something then, like, clearly it's a grace of God that he had this for us, you know. I'll just say the prayer if that's okay.
Please.
For thy greater glory and consolation, O most sacred heart of Jesus, for thy sake, to give good example, to practice self-denial, to make reparation to thee for the sins of intemperance, and for the conversion of excessive drinkers, I promise to abstain for life from all intoxicating drink. So it's for the sacred heart of Jesus, give good example, practice self-denial. So it's a real, Father James Cullen called it like the heroic offering, this idea, because I got to make a cultural context as well. I'm sure you saw this at home, like in Ireland. It's very different drinking culture to America. Like coming here to America, I've seen people have a really healthy relationship with alcohol.
Yes.
Like really ordered and just enjoy it like it was meant to be, like convivial, like people get together and they'll have a couple of drinks.
Without getting hammered.
Yeah.
Whereas in Ireland...
it's you drink to get drunk. And, you know, it's like, I will have a couple of drinks in this bar. And then I should have one before we go. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to the next bar, have a couple of drinks here. And then, one before we
just
go.
Just a wee nightcap before I go home. Yeah.
And, you know, I remember trying to keep pace with my friends one time by drinking Sprite. So like I was able to go and have the crack with everybody. Again, crack just means fun in Ireland. It's not a drug. It's spelled differently. Sorry. Having the fun with my friends. I loved going out and having the crack with my friends. But I tried to keep pace with them. I was like, how do you guys physically do this? Like 13, 14 pints. And I was like,
13, 14 pints of Sprite. Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
My teeth are falling
out. I was in bits. But then I also had the benefit of really having some good fun with my drunken friends.
Yeah. And you're on a sugar high that matches
their
alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So one time my friends, they were getting ready for a night out, and you know, like pre-drinks. I don't know if that's a thing in America where it's like it's cheaper to drink at home first and get kind of tanked up and then go out and then go for it. They asked me to help them out with buying their alcohol, which I probably wouldn't do now because they actually were drinking to get drunk. Anyway, they get vodka for this drinking game called Kings. It's just a drinking game, and I swapped the vodka for water.
Oh, wow.
And dipped my finger into the vodka and put it around the rim of the bottle.
So it smelled like vodka.
So like these 6-7 girls are playing drinking game with Sprite and water, and they're getting all kind of, you know, tipsy and happy, and I'm totally serious. And one girl took a big drink and was like, that's too strong.
No.
Yeah. So I had the best
placebo effect.
Yeah, I had the best fun. just having the fun with that as well, you know. So that's it. It's just a positive life decision. It's in no way prohibitionist or looking down on anybody on our high horses. Yeah. It's just making reparation for those who struggle.
What's the advice? Because I imagine a good number of people who become pioneers are those who have had a problem with alcohol and have had something of a conversion and wear the pin. What is said to them when they go back to the booze? You know, so they want to make this commitment, but maybe they can't make it or haven't made it in a sort of heroic way that you have. Does that happen often?
Where they relapse back in?
Absolutely.
Like I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. I mean, that's why when AA came to Ireland, it went hand in glove with the pioneer movement.
Yeah.
Because the pioneer movement wasn't asking the alcoholics to give it up and just pray your way through it. It was like, we're going to pray with you. We're going to help you. We're going to give you the grace. We're going to storm heaven for you. And then we're going to, hopefully, by our holy violence, you know, going to help you through this. And then AA came along and helped them practically. The strength for somebody who becomes a pioneer after having struggled with alcohol, I believe, is in the wearing of the pin and saying the prayer twice a day. It's like the strength of that commitment, or the strength of that offering is by doing what is asked of us, and then just throwing it all at the Sacred Heart of Jesus and saying, Lord, you know, your pierced and merciful heart is there for me, and I'm wearing it on my breast, and I want to do this for you. Give me the grace and help me do it. And it's not like you drank, therefore you're out and you're gone. So like some people take it temporarily. Like for example, if you're going to do it for life, they don't let you do it for life. You take it for a year first, and then see, do I want to do this and become a full life member? Some people take it for Lent. Some people take it for like a year, just like an offering for their own personal intention, for somebody who struggles with addiction, for any addiction whatsoever.
And if they take it for Lent, do they wear the pin?
Yeah, so there's a temporary pin. So like you supply, it's like a website that pioneered Total Abstinence Association. You can Google it.
Someone's gonna do a new URL for that. But okay, was it good?
I know.
But it doesn't matter. But people can look up Pioneer. How would they find it?
It's the PTAA, so Pioneer Total Abstinence Association is the name of the organisation.
Yeah.
But if you just type in Pioneers Ireland or that type of thing, you'll get it. Like we've had numerous people in America who've taken the life pledge because either they didn't drink already and it's like, okay, I'll get some grace for that. You know what I mean? I'll join that. Or they have struggled with alcohol and they're just not able to have an ordered relationship with it, and they've taken it and look, this. You want to have good fun, you want to enjoy yourselves, just decide to enjoy yourselves and have fun. You don't really necessarily need alcohol.
Yeah.
But again, I just want to stress the difference in the Irish culture and the American culture, that I've seen people have a beautiful, healthy relationship with it. Because
I'm sure that is the objection you get. And so it's like you have to almost like preemptively respond to the objection you know they're about to bring up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Especially with the prohibitionist history in America. Yeah, which wasn't necessarily the same in Ireland.
And it's a puritanical movement as well. People associate it with sort of fundamentalism.
Absolutely. And like when I came to America, people just all like, oh yeah, let's get some whiskey and some Guinness. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I would love, I don't drink. And well, I only have like one. This is not.
I'm not judging you. It's not about you.
This is not the point. It's not what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
It's something that I love, like I truly love. It's something that it's just a different life choice. It's helped me grow in my faith. It's helped me pray for those. Like it's just a tangible act of reparation for those who struggle. I have even more respect for those who actually drank and then took it, because I never drank and neither did my wife. It's definitely an Irish thing as well. It's a worldwide movement now because the Irish missionaries took it across the world. It's a real thing for my family as well. It's not only is it a Catholic thing and the Sacred Heart devotions for my family, and I'm so blessed because I have no doubt it protected me a lot growing up.
Well, I know it's devotion to the Sacred Heart, but do you know Protestants who take the pledge, or not really?
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. Again, think of the Irish context now between Catholics and Protestants. There's not too much overlap when it comes to faith stuff. Like there wouldn't be, like, I'd never heard of a convert in my lifetime at home.
Yeah.
And you come here and it's like, whoa, Scott Hahn, John Bergsma, these guys are phenomenal. Like, whoa. And they chose it. You chose to become a Catholic.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Like, trying to think, what was it that drove them, and what was it that compelled them? What was it about the faith that made them want to take it on? It's a different story at home. You either born with it and then you lapse, or you fall into new agey stuff, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, let's take some questions here. This is amazing. We've had over 500 people just watching throughout this live chat so far.
I'm so sorry, everybody, if you don't understand my accent. I really should.
I don't think we'd be having 500 people stick around for long if they couldn't understand you.
Yeah. Can you do subtitles, Joe? Can you, like, Spanish dub
We
me?
should both ham it up. I'll do my bloody Australian accent, the drawl, drag on the voice. And have you found that you've had to kind of enunciate?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I taught at Franciscan this semester, and I really did slow down and enunciate. I do have a teacher type voice where, like, I'm really careful what I'm saying.
Yes.
I'm trying to get across my point, so I'll slow down and really emphasize. But if I get really excited about something, like in my testimony or something, I'm just like,
Yeah.
So
I found, like, I don't know if this was your experience, but when I first came to North America, I liked the idea that people liked my accent, that they were like, oh wow, I can barely understand you. Like in the beginning, you come over, you talk a lot, this a bit, but after a while it gets annoying when people can't understand you, and so you find that you begin to enunciate. And I had some bloke the other day in a YouTube comment section said, I cannot figure out this host's accent. Is he British? Is he New Zealand?
Heaven forbid.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Andrew Montpetit, thanks Andrew for your super chat, mate. That was super kind of you. He says, it seems other traditionally faithful Catholic countries like Italy, Mexico, etc., losing their faith and treat Catholicism as more of a cultural aspect of their lives. Could you speak to that and how Ireland relates?
Yeah, I think you're. Is it Anthony or Andrew? Andrew, I think you're spot on, Andrew. People my generation, people slightly younger as well, will still want to get married in a Catholic church. A couple of my best friends are totally atheists, but want to get married in a Catholic church. They will get their kids baptized. They'll have Catholic funerals, and that's really the only time you'll see them throughout the year. Graveyard Sunday, like praying for the dead's a big thing at home. So like we have a thing called Cemetery Sunday or Graveyard Sunday, where once a year everybody will come to the graveyard of their family plot, and they'll pray the rosary and they'll pray for the dead, and it's packed. People are really really have that the sort of vestiges of praying for the dead left behind. They are happy to call themselves Catholic, but totally happy to say, I don't believe what the church teaches on many, many things. And again, like you throw a stick in Ireland, like I lead pilgrimages around Ireland, like so like we go around all these different places, you throw a stick and you're going to hit something Catholic, something ancient, a monastic site, it's still there. And even as Archbishop Charles Brown said, he was nuncio at the time, the lived experience of a pious faith was still there. Like my grandparents had that. That's just that generation. That's the difference. Like they grew up with it. They lived it. They were pious and faithful people. It's from my grandparents to me where things just went really haywire. And that cultural Catholicism is still there. It's still like left over. And we have a ways to go in Ireland. We have a ways to go for more things to be stripped away before we can really say, like for example, in our hospitals, there's still largely Catholic hospitals. You'll have statues of Our Lady. The wards will be like St. Bernadette's ward or St. Catherine's ward, and they're trying. The government's trying to bring about taking that out, and trying to divest certain elements of faith out of the schools and stuff, and being
let them. Part of me said let them.
Exactly.
Let the whole thing burn down. And let's start again. Small and faithful.
They're gleeful about it, and we have to say, well, oh yeah, okay, fair enough, that's fine. But we're already building. We're already planning for whenever you guys are done with all your stuff. We're already planning. We're going to have something more fervent and better to come back with. That's what we have to do. And but yeah, cultural Catholicism is a huge thing at home, and particularly more in the north because of the Troubles. We never really got into the Troubles, but because of the Troubles and the war that happened, because your identity was Irish, Catholic, nationalist, and you couldn't trust the government, you couldn't trust the police, you couldn't trust the civil service. The church and Catholic identity was a massive part of that struggle, and it's kind of still lived more so that mass attendance and faith will probably be stronger in the north than it would be in the south.
Well, that actually leads us to this next question. It comes from Michael Beaumont. Thanks for your super chat, Michael. He says, how are Catholic-Protestant relations today? True Christian unity could be such a powerful counter-narrative in an ever-devolving and tribalistic world.
Yeah, thanks be to God, the violence has stopped. I sort of count the end of the Troubles as 2007, but there's no hard end to it. I mean, again, when I lead pilgrimages around Ireland, we go to places where effectively territory is marked out, where you have red, white and blue curbstones, because that's the colour of the British flag. That's their territory. You have green, white and gold, or green, white and orange curbstones and flags marking the Catholic nationalist areas. You still have sporadic violence and riots at different times, interface areas. There are parts of Belfast that are separated by peace walls, literally through housing estates, separating the two communities. At certain parts of the year, particularly around the 12th of July, which is a commemoration of William of Orange having a victory over the Catholic King James, even though the Pope wasn't even sure who he was supporting, it was just this is what happened. They celebrate that. There's generally riots there. Some things can happen, like for example, Brexit threw a real spanner in the works. So there's a real stirring of Protestant loyalist tendencies to say, well, we're staying with the UK, we're staying with mainland Britain, you guys can't put a border on the Irish Sea, because the whole Northern Ireland Protocol was, we don't want a border north and south, because that would start the Troubles again. So they were like the EU and the Irish and British governments were really trying to maintain the peace that happened there. But like again, 2011, a friend of mine, I was more friendly with his brother, Ronan Kerr, was blew up in a car bomb. Because he was a Catholic nationalist who joined the police force, which was seen to be a Protestant police force. So he was seen to be crossing the line. And like that was a guy in my school, like he's 2 years above me in school. I'm friendly with, I knew him to talk to, and friendly with his brother. Blew up on a car bomb. And so it's still there, and even our politics are completely split along nationalist Catholic lines and Protestant Unionist lines. But I have to make a really important point. Our Protestant brothers and sisters are way more Catholic than our current Catholic politicians at home. Why am I saying that? I voted for the DUP. I voted for the Unionist Party for the last 5-6 times I was able to vote for them, because they protect marriage and they protect life. And our other politicians don't do that. And I feel like again, I know my history. My degree was history and politics, my undergrad. I know what it is. I've taught the courses, and I have no qualms about voting for these people who defend marriage and who defend life whenever these people don't. So there's definitely room for dialogue there, but there's still a tension around nationalistic identity, around will Ireland become united or not? Will it end up sparking more violence? So until that happens, I don't see doctrinal issues really being talked about or discussed.
But what are relations like between faithful Catholics and faithful Protestants? People who don't view Catholic and Irish as synonyms for Irish and English.
Very amicable. Very amicable. They'll have like the pro-life movement in the north, very cross community, really striving to fight for common goals. But again, the antagonism and the hatred really isn't there anymore, because you would have had legitimate like hatred and bitterness and actual sectarianism. So like when I look at America and there's a big discussion about racism, I was never exposed to racism, because sectarianism was our thing. It was, Catholic and Protestant. It was about which tribe, which side you belong to. And so amicable, very amicable, but still segregated. So for example, like I grew up going on the same school bus as Protestants to, we have a Catholic schools, they have their Protestant schools. The Protestants sat at the front of the bus, we sat at the back of the bus. And the same with high school. On the way to Omagh, which is our nearest town, they sat at the front of the bus, we sat at the back of the bus. And
that wasn't just because you were at different schools?
No. That was just because you don't sit with the Protestants, they don't sit with the Catholics.
Wow.
And then you go to college and the Catholics hang out in this bar, they hang out and play these sports, they do these things and hobbies. Whereas a Protestant does this bar, does these sports, these different hobbies. So like I didn't know any Protestants growing up.
But I think it's important, we mentioned this at the start of the show, but for those who are just joining us, when we talk about this divide between Protestants and Catholics, we're talking about a divide between the English and the Irish. It really isn't a doctrinal thing from what you're telling me.
It's a nationalistic conflict and issue that happened to be along religious lines.
Yeah.
I
remember, who's that, is it the Celtic, the soccer team up north everyone used to go for?
Celtic, aye.
Now, I was, if I'm remembering correctly, people would actually make the sign of the cross in the football stadiums when Celtics would get a goal against the Protestant side.
Celtic and
so-called
Celtic
side.
and Rangers.
What an abomination that is.
It's
sorry, was that too strong?
No.
Are you going to use the sign of the cross as a kind of FU to the other team when you got a goal?
Yeah.
I get that it's kind of cute, but
I know,
sacrilegious.
But it's the outworkings of that cultural, nationalistic, and then religious divide is really bizarre how it works itself out. So like you'll have bonfires in the loyalist Protestant side where the Irish tricolour, the Irish flag's there, statues of the Virgin Mary are there, effigies of the Pope are there, and they're being burnt.
Oh Lord.
On the other side, you'll have the Queen, you'll have different aspects of the Britishness and Protestantism, and on their bonfires, Celtic and Rangers are like, so the Rangers are the Protestant Unionist people who they support. Yeah. But like if you look at the people in Belfast and the city of Derry where they support these teams, and you take away their jerseys, and they have the same social economic deprivation, they have the same lack of social mobility, they have the same lack of education, they have the same lack of good jobs, they have the same lack of social housing, the exact same scenario. But we don't want to be like them, don't want to do anything to do with you, But again, thanks be to God, it's nowhere near as bad as it was. Nowhere near as bad as it was.
Yeah, here's an interesting question. Kathy Walsh says, is it true that the sacraments are still on hold for most people in Ireland? Tell us about that.
Up until like a couple of weeks ago,
Wasn't it illegal to celebrate Mass?
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah. From the first time since the penal times that we talked about earlier in the conversation, like for example, there's a priest in Cavan where he refused to close his church,
Man.
he was fined by the police and still said, "I'm refusing to pay it." He doesn't want anybody, and they do-gooder to come and pay it. He's like, "No, I want them to take me the whole way." The police had checkpoints around the church to stop people from coming to Mass. So that was one issue. Then you had other priests who were just quietly, probably just never closed the doors and just kept coming. But yeah, we had one of maybe the most stringent lockdowns anywhere in the world. Three of them. And the worst of it is the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, came out and said, "Oh, we can't do First Communions, we can't do confirmations."
It's hard not to be conspiratorial, isn't it? In a country where all the major powers are against the church.
Yeah. There are, without sounding conspiratorial, it's a fact. Overnight, the pro-abortion movement went from being very poorly funded and very scattered to being very well funded and organised from different donors and people in America and stuff who came over and really used Ireland as a testing board for how do we get this into Catholic countries, how do we push this agenda. And then you have the fact that Ireland is beholden to the EU, which has a very liberal agenda, and they're dictating a lot of the things that happen, and they're really the poster child for the modern liberal state. And every time they throw off some sort of vestige of a Catholic past, it's celebrated as if it's freedom, and yeah, through those lockdowns, it was bizarre for me and my wife talking to our family at home because we had Mass from last summer. Like, now obviously we're in Steubenville, it's a small enough city, it's not got a massive through traffic. I mean, the measures were in place. You had to wear masks, you had to social distance, but we had the sacrament since last summer. In Ireland, you didn't have that. They had it a bit of Christmas. Then it was lockdown again, like level 5 lockdown. No chance of having any sacraments whatsoever. Scotland, I think maybe Italy, France, and maybe Belgium took the governments to court. I think they were successful in saying this is unconstitutional. The church didn't do it in Ireland. It was a layman who did it. Took the government to court. It's still being processed. The churches are now open again, but I mean the numbers, like it was 10 at a wedding. It was maybe 50 at a church, no matter the size of its cathedral, 50 at a church. And they said you can't, the government said, you can't do First Holy Communions and you can't do confirmations. How they got away with that, I don't know. But yeah, that's the story. And people have been really suffering. I mean really suffering, like really hungering, desiring for the sacraments.
I was speaking to an Irish friend of mine recently, and he said it feels like I've been deprived from seeing my friend for the longest time, and I'm still friends with him. I just don't have a vibrant relationship with him anymore. Makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I moved to Steubenville, and this was back in January, I said I want to go somewhere, and I need to find a priest who will absolutely disobey the government and give my family sacraments. Tell me that priest's name. So we found him. All right, John Kelly says, thanks for your super chat, John. He says, does Ireland offer us Americans with Irish roots dual citizenship back to Ireland due to famine exit?
Whoa. I have no idea how far back it goes, Brian. I do know the grandmother rule. You can get citizenship through that. I'm as far as I'm aware. I'm sorry, I'm not technically au fait with the ins and outs of the immigration and stuff. But as far as I'm aware, grandmother, grandfather, you can get Irish citizenship. I'm not sure that it goes beyond that. I don't think.
Sam W., thanks for your super chat, says, hi, I'm a convert in Northern Ireland who was received into the church this year.
Good man, Sam.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where can I find fellowship with on-fire Catholics for the kind of fellowship I used to have, I suppose, as a Protestant?
Wow. Any
good organisations or movements?
Okay.
Again, it's in Northern Ireland.
Yeah. Sam, God bless you. That's incredible. I'm delighted to hear that. U2000 are one of the only shows in town, really. They have regional retreats like whenever COVID was allowing stuff like that. Regional retreats in every province in Ireland. They have a massive annual retreat. We have a couple of thousand people. I know good priests who are trying to make things happen, and then I don't want to mention names, but if you get in contact with me afterwards, I'll try and direct you towards some of those guys who try to make good things happen. But the unfortunate thing is that you have to work hard to find it, and that's the case everywhere in the world. Obviously, you have to. How hard are you prepared to work to find the Catholic community? I mean, that was one of the reasons why we came to America, because we wanted to experience the Catholic community that was here. We wanted to see what it was like to be a lived Catholic community. Again, don't get me wrong, Ireland does community really, really well, but a community that's founded on the love of Jesus, on the sacraments, and is prepared to live the faith, it's not so much. And so you're going to have to work hard to do it. Be prepared to travel. There are some things in Belfast. There are some things in different parts of the north. But again, at home, we have a priest friend of mine who actually is from America, and we used to laugh at him, being like, "You're driving 3 hours to come and see us? Like 3 hours, from one end of the country to the other?" Because again, Ireland's like the size of Indiana. And then he thought nothing of it. That's something we've seen in America. People will just go and they'll drive and they'll get involved in things. So you have to work a bit harder to find it. But that's something I hope and pray will become easier for you. But again, contact me afterwards and I'll try and plug you in a bit.
How would you like him to contact you?
He can get my email if he wants.
How will he do that?
Anybody can email me. So it's just Harte.
Harte?
Harte at Franciscan.edu. And that's my email.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I remember when I came to our Lord when I was 17, I didn't have any fellowship. My bishop was really my source of fellowship. Would you believe that? Go around to his house, have cups of tea.
That's unbelievable.
He'd show up at my house with some Jesus videos. Here, Mattie, you want to watch these? Yes, please. And but I tell you, the Lord is faithful. Yeah,
he really is. And whenever we make decisions for him and the people in our lives previously who are beautiful, good, amazing people and still are, but you want to be able to share your heart with somebody and your deepest part of yourself, which is your love of Jesus and your love of the faith.
Yeah.
God will provide you with those people.
Alexander Harding says, why does Matthew think it is that it's the Protestant DUP who stands up for Christian values while the Catholic, scare quotes, parties have rejected them?
Many, like if you listen to the first part of our discussion, many of the reasons I mentioned, the sort of rejection of the faith, the oppression, the way it was taught, the fact they weren't catechized, the fact that, I remember a priest friend of mine, he was at an ecumenical forum and an actual Protestant pastor asked him that question. He was like, how is it that a church, that you've emphasized education so much, but yet your people aren't prepared to follow through with what's going on? So many of the things we discussed in the previous part of the conversation are a factor of that, the lack of formation, the seeming oppression and the seeming, obviously scandals and abuses, and then just the modern secular society that has carried these people away. The Protestants have just stayed stronger. They've just held out stronger. They've just been more fervent. They've been more, for what their formation is, they've been better at it. As Sam said, there's better community, there's better emphasis on the faith, and they've held fast.
Kyle Barrington says, we must know, what is his favourite Irish music band? Has he heard of the Drowsy Lads from Columbus, Ohio, quite near you all?
I actually have not heard of the Drowsy Lads. So Irish music, there's a band called the High Kings.
Mm-hmm.
They do some great stuff. And then, we have, secular artists as well. I was a U2 fan for a while. Went to see them in concert, but some of the earlier stuff is better. But yeah, the High Kings are probably I really enjoy them. Yeah.
Okay. I had a question back here and then it went away. So I'm just going to awkwardly scroll through these while you take a drink of water. What is, and listen, I mean, some of these questions you've addressed, but feel free to run around them again or not.
Yeah.
Eclipse Solar says, what is Matthew's opinion on Ireland going back to its deep Catholic roots? Against it.
Yeah. No, I would again echo Father Vincent Toomey, where he sort of said this modern rejection of traditional Irish Catholicism was actually a rejection of something that wasn't actually fully Irish or fully Catholic. There was a lack of intellectual and formation. There was a real conformism. It's just, this is what everybody's doing, so we just do it. There was a real sort of Jansenist tendency to the faith. So whenever that's expelled, and we actually go back to, well, what was it to be an Irish Catholic? And you look at the monastic traditions, we look at the missionary traditions, we look at the penitential traditions, we look at the deep love of Our Lady. I mean, an incredible love of Our Lady and the Eucharist and the Mass, and the strength of our martyrs, the strength of their, our saints who've gone before us, who re-evangelized huge swathes of Europe, of men, women, and children who died for the faith. That's a baton, that's a narrative, that's an incredible heritage, just waiting to be taken up and run with. And I'm excited for that to happen. Please God, it will soon. But to reclaim what is essentially Irish and Catholic, I think is what Father Vincent is saying, and that's how it has to happen. And if you're not familiar with Our Lady of Knock, please go and check out that apparition. It's phenomenal. Like it's
yeah, I'm familiar, of course, but just give us a brief description of it.
Yeah, so 1879, for 2 hours on the side gable wall of a church, after a priest had just spent 100 days offering masses for the souls of the dead. Again, this is just post-famine, so famine time was 45 to 47, and there were minor famines after that. And rural Ireland, you had just mass graves, and you had people just dying on the side of the road, but they kept strong to the faith. Our Lady appeared, but she was actually off-centre. In the centre was the Lamb of God on the altar with a cross behind him, with angels adoring the Lamb, and then as you look at it, to the left, Our Lady with the crown, with the rose on the crown, and sort of like in a priestly stance, offering her heart, offering the Mass, offering the hearts and the suffering of the people of Ireland to God. St. Joseph was beside her, head bowed in prayer, and St. John the Evangelist was there preaching the gospel. It's a silent apparition, which I think speaks to the contemplative and deep spirituality of the Irish people. She didn't say anything because there was definitely a movement from Irish language to English language, and there's no official meditation or meaning, understanding of that apparition. One of my favourite things to do when I do pilgrimages is to bring people to Our Lady and to that Eucharistic apparition and just say, what do you think? Like, go and pray with that, go and contemplate what's happening here. And then Pope Francis recently raised it to the level of an international shrine. Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II came there, St. Teresa of Calcutta came there, Pope Francis visited when he came to Ireland, and it actually was the shrine for the Divine Word Sunday because of the heavenly liturgy is being seen there. The prayers they're offering, the fact the gospel is being preached. It's an unbelievable apparition. I think it's one of those things there are a few sites in Ireland that are just waiting to be taken up again. They're waiting to be like, let's run with it. Like Lough Derg is another one, a penitential pilgrimage site where affectionately known as the Iron Man of Catholic pilgrimages.
You tell us about Lough Derg for those who aren't familiar.
Yeah. So it's a 3-day thing where you go onto an island in the middle of rural Ireland, and it dates back to the time of St. Patrick, where you take off your socks and shoes, you don't see them for 2.5 days, and then you pray stations which are laps of the basilica, then laps of ancient monks' huts in bare feet, praying the same prayers over and over again. You stay up all night doing the same thing, the prayers inside the basilica. You don't go to sleep until 10 p.m. the next night. You wake up again.
So how many hours are you awake for straight?
So from
over 24 hours?
Oh yeah, 20, probably what's 36 hours. And you only had one meal a day, which is dry toast and black tea.
Nice.
And then you do your final station and you go off the island and you don't break your fast until midnight the third night. Now, that might sound incredibly sadistic, and it might sound like people who don't come from a tradition of maybe of penance, of the Irish tradition, but this, back in the Middle Ages, when maps of Ireland had 3 or 4 ports, you also had Lough Derg. Like St. Teresa of Avila wrote about Lough Derg. It was
I had no idea.
it's a phenomenally well-known ancient.
And it was a place of retreat. Back then, or was it?
It was known as St. Patrick's Purgatory.
Yeah.
So if you've seen Bishop Barron's Catholicism series, the section on Purgatory is actually filmed at Lough Derg. And then people talk about like a thin veil between like this world and the next. It's an unbelievable experience of a realization that, because you've no phone reception, you're out in an island in the middle of this lake between the north and south of Ireland, and you're walking in the footsteps of hundreds of thousands of Irish pilgrims and those from across Europe.
Has liberal Catholicism touched Lough Derg?
You
don't want to answer? I hope it gets its bloody hands off it as soon as possible.
You can still have a phenomenal experience there if you go with somebody who's going to help you and go through it. So like whenever I lead pilgrimages there, we only do one day. I don't take them through the whole 3 days. We do one day and we do a tour, do a sample of it. But there's sites like that, like Lough Derg, Clonmacnoise, Glendalough, where there's just, it's tangible, the heritage and beauty and passion and fire of the Irish faith that's just there waiting to be picked up again. And a good friend of mine, he's a priest in Galway, he really thinks that we need to reclaim these sites and make them centres of worldwide Catholicism, where they know you come to knock, you're going to get incredible formation on the Eucharist, on Our Lady, on St. Joseph and the Word of God, and you're going to spend time in adoration, and you're going to go there and get on fire for what that has to offer. You go to Lough Derg, you're going to get incredible experience of penance, of offering up your suffering, of getting a deep, deep understanding of what our Lord asks us to do in the spiritual life. And if you're going to go for 3 days and you can bring your families and you can bring other people, and it's going to be a phenomenal experience. You go to Glendalough and Clonmacnoise, you're going to experience Irish monasticism, what they did, how they lived it, the beauty of the Irish countryside. It's like, put these places on the worldwide map and say, I want to go there. I want to get what's best out of Irish Catholicism there,
That's inspiring. Alexander Kush says, are there any floats or parades on St. Paddy's Day, or just an excuse to get drunk? Any weird traditions for St. Paddy's Day we may not know about?
America actually does St. Patrick's Day bigger than Ireland does. We again, growing up, it's a holy day of obligation at home, so we always went to mass. And one thing we do at home is that we actually wear shamrocks. So like on the lapel of our jackets or on our shirts, like the shops will sell wee small sort of tinfoil or wrapped things of shamrocks, and you pin them to your shirt on your way to mass. And generally the mass will be said in the Irish language, so not always. And then traditionally it was a big day for football.
Okay.
So people would go back to their homes and get dinner and relax, and then watch the football. And in America, you guys go big. I know you guys, you're obviously Trent, but America, they go big. They do it bigger than we do.
Yeah.
Dublin has a bit of a parade and some floats and stuff, but it's a massive excuse to get drunk as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
What do you think of Americans who are like, oh, I'm Irish?
Yeah, like that threw me.
If I were you, I would be cringing. Respect to your culture, and it's great that you come from Irish. Yeah. But I shouldn't say that, because people obviously identify with Ireland. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, so there's two answers. One was when I first came over, I went to Franciscan and I saw a girl wearing a shirt saying Irish, and I was like, oh, you're Irish? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, where are you from? I was like, oh, I'm from Connecticut. And like, huh? She said, oh, yeah, but I'm Irish. She's like, oh, okay, so what, like, he said, oh, yeah, like, generations back. And I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Connecticut, what county is Connecticut in? I'm blanking. Yeah.
But over my time here, it gives me great pride. I'll be totally honest. It gives me great pride to see how much Irish Catholicism and Irishness means to people in America. The Irish American diaspora runs deep. And even if people are some part German, some part something else, whatever part of Irish they are Irish.
Yeah.
They're fiercely proud of it, Yeah. That I love it. I really enjoy it now. And if that could translate into the goodness and the best of what it is to be Irish. That would be obviously the best thing. But it does amaze me that people know their heritage, they know where they come from, they generally know where their parents or grandparents or great grandparents or what it was, where they came from, and they're proud of it. And I think that's a great thing.
Now I'm going to ask you to speak some Irish for us in a moment. My understanding, of course, is that Irish, Gaelic, different types of Gaelic, but predates Latin.
Yeah, to my shame, I was the one child in my house that didn't do Irish.
Well, this is going to go great.
I know, I'm sorry.
So my
brother and sister were, like my sister was, my brother is.
You were saying Michaela taught it.
Yeah, and my brother does. Like he speaks, we have an Irish language.
You got to know some of it.
I do know some of it.
We'll do some of that in a second.
Yeah.
So I used to go to a church. We used to live in Donegal in the Gaeltacht.
Yeah.
And
it still amazes me that you were there. That's
isn't that crazy? At
so
Enya's church, for those who know Enya, remember old Enya? Enya would come back Christmas Eve and sing.
So much.
And I'd go to daily mass and Enya's folks would be there. I remember having a beer with Enya's sister. And I would actually sing in Gaelic.
Wow.
Do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of it anymore.
That's unbelievable. So you were doing the...
I know, I'm ashamed. I don't want to talk about the fact that I was up there with a guitar because I'd cringe over that now. But yes, I was there.
You were singing
Irish. It was
Irish.
transliterated for me,
so
and
class.
I was up there with a couple of teenagers with their tin whistles and their bowrongs, and we'd...
That's so hilarious.
We'd
how you found
Gaelic.
yourself in the Irish Gaeltacht area.
Isn't that amazing?
It's so mad.
We weren't terribly welcomed. Got to be really discreet about that.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we were so new, man.
Can you explain just how did you end up there?
So we served with Net Ministries in Ireland, and while we were there, we encountered a priest, Father Michael Sweeney. He was about 120 at the time. I'm just joking. But he's really old, but strong.
Yeah.
Strong, old, beautiful Irish man, and just really had a heart for the young people. And so after my wife and I got married, he asked if we'd want to come and live and work there.
Yeah.
And so we did. So we moved to Donegal, had no idea what we were getting ourselves into.
Unbelievable.
Had our first 2 children there, lived there for about 3 years. And,
yeah.
But...
because, Ireland in general is kind of suspicious of foreigners or somebody coming in, particularly if you're trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
You're trying to give them the faith. Like, we're all Catholic here. What are you doing?
Yeah, definitely we got that. We had people who were like, you must be Mormon. You mean Mormon? No, we're Catholic. You mean Mormon? No, we don't believe Mormon. We know what Mormons are. We're Catholic.
Yeah.
We don't. Why would you need Catholic missionaries?
I was in youth ministry and people couldn't understand what I was doing. You're a youth minister. Are you a priest? Are you a priest? No, he's married. Is he a deacon? No, what is he? What are you doing? They could not figure out what I was trying to do because all our schools are Catholic and everybody's Catholic. So, what are you trying to do? It's like you guys coming in as foreigners.
Well, you know what people said, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but they said it was almost better that we weren't from Ireland because people trusted us more.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Now, I wasn't sure if they were just saying that to make us feel better or not, but they said there's something about Americans and Canadians and Australians talking about the Catholic faith that puts people's defences down a little.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is.
I'd say it just depends on the person, because there is a debate. There's a debate at home about what we do and how we use. So, I do look to America in many respects because you guys, again, saying you guys.
You guys, yeah.
Joseph. Yeah, this guy.
The camera guy.
Just you alone, are doing incredible things. That's why I think I have incredible hope with what the church is doing in America, where you have Catholic universities, you have Catholic communities, you have people who are spreading the faith, you have people converting to the faith, you have bishops who are leading and priests who are following and lay people who are following and rising up and supporting and mutually giving and receiving of each other to say, let's do this together. I'm looking on in awe, being like, whoa, this is phenomenal. My first exposure was through Focus, and we were actually hired as Focus missionaries. We couldn't actually take up our position because of a complication in a pregnancy. Thanks be to God, everything was fine. But we were exposed to the likes of people who teach at Franciscan here, the likes of the speakers who went to the Augustine Institute and these things, and being like, these guys are living it. It's actually changing their lives. It's phenomenal. And I'm looking there going so we've imported your culture. Your Hollywood's our Hollywood. Your music's our music. Your thing, why can't we import some of this?
Yeah.
Why can't we catch some of the good stuff?
Yeah, we know how the Kardashians are. Could we at least have some faithful Catholics?
But you have there is a debate then, because sometimes how that translates from American into Irish, as in like into the cultural context and stuff, and you know we do need Irish people
absolutely
trained up and
Well, pray the Hail Mary for us.
Okay, in Irish.
Yeah.
In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. Siad the Vahawara, Atala Antagrasta, Tan Chirlat, Espana Hudamra, Aspire de Vonisa, Neve Wara Waharjay, Girin the Paki Anish, Gasarura Wash, Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll kind of wrap up with that. What do you think?
No worries,
Good place to end on the Hail Mary. Anything else
absolutely.
you want to...
No, just please pray for my country. I really mean that. Please pray for my country. I love my country. I love, I really want to see it thrive and flourish again. It breaks my heart in so many ways what's happened, but the Lord is good, and the faithful people there who are fighting the good fight, just please pray for them, give them the strength of perseverance, and if you can help, and if somebody's there and wants to go and do something to help Ireland, just give it a think. What would be some organisations that you would, there's probably some Americans who are like, I want to go to Ireland, do some missionary work. Anything in particular you would point them to? There's unfortunately there's not a lot. There's not a lot, and that I would say, Rob McNamara, we had the same type of conversation. Is like people think we're holding it on them, but we're not. Like there's not a lot. U2000 are one of the only ones. Pure in Heart was one of them, and I'm sure if it's still going. But the different solid priests who are trying to do things will bring focused mission teams, and they'll bring different missions teams to Ireland, and that's a way they can get involved. That's a way, and it is something I would like to see happen more, is like a channel or avenue by which we can say solid things. You want to go and have a good experience and do solid things in Ireland, there you go. As a former netter, I would tell people to go check out netministries.ie. You can be a young single person, you want to travel the country, lead high school retreats. That would be one that I would think of. And of course, you got the Friars of the Renewal in different places. You can perhaps get in touch with them and see if they need any help. I mean, the Nashville Dominican Sisters are there. I mean, if you want, we would love some more religious orders to come over and help us out as well. Indeed. Indeed. We really tried to get the Sisters of Life over prior to the abortion referendum, because they're great. They're great crack. They are indeed. All right, Matt, thanks so much for being on the show. This has been real fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, cool. God bless. Thank you.